A cosplay event is underway. There are many photographers, all eager to capture the best shot. A guy named Kazuya is especially excited to take photos of the top female cosplayer at the event. He's already snapped a few pictures but wants to get her to look directly at him. So he calls out to her and asks her to pose. The cosplayer complies and strikes a pose for him. Just as Kazuya is in the middle of taking photos, someone starts poking him. Feeling annoyed, he turns around only to see several beautiful girls dressed in bunny girl costumes. One of them even looks really upset with Kazuya. That's when Kazuya suddenly wakes up. Turns out it was all just a dream. He glances over at the camera on the bedside table. At the end of that summer break, he feels like he's discovered something that changed him. The next morning, Kazuya walks down the stairs. His younger sister, Kanon, and their parents are already in the living room, getting ready for their day. After everyone is ready, Kanon runs out the door, heading to school. It's a bright morning, and Kazuya also walks to school along with other students. A girl approaches Kazuya and greets him. Her name is Haruka. She asks how Kazuya's summer break went. He replies that he didn't do much. Haruka then shares that she saw Kanon every day at club practice, but she never saw Kazuya there. Haruka notices that Kazuya is carrying a camera. Kazuya explains that his dad recently bought a new camera, so he gave Kazuya the old one. Haruka points out that the camera Kazuya has looks like the kind professionals use. As they're talking, a girl on a bike rides up behind them and greets them both. Kazuya and Haruka return the greeting. As she rides past, a girl comments that they look really close, walking to school together. She says she's always wanted to experience a school life like that. Waving, she tells them she'll see them at school. Haruka is confused, not knowing who the girl is. Kazuya also admits that he has no idea. Haruka then asks Kazuya to take her picture sometime. Kazuya hesitates for a moment but eventually agrees. Haruka is thrilled and runs off, catching up with her friend Tomo. The two exchange greetings and ask each other how they've been. But suddenly, another girl runs up and hugs Haruka from behind, startling Tomo. Haruka is known for her cheerful personality and good grades. She's also a top member of the tennis club and is popular among her classmates. Haruka and Kazuya used to run together at the park when they were kids, but over time she seemed to grow more distant from him. Kazuya recalls Haruka's request to be photographed earlier and wonders if this connection with the camera will change things. He smiles to himself. A flashback shows what happened the day before. Kazuya was playing darts in his room when Kanon came in, asking to borrow a pencil case. Kazuya let her take one from his desk. As she was looking, Kanon spotted the camera and recognized it as their dad's. Kazuya explained that the camera was his now. Kanon was jealous, complaining that Kazuya always got the expensive stuff. Kazuya told her she should be upset with her dad, not him. Annoyed, Kanon declared that she would make their dad buy her new clothes. She then asked if Kazuya had taken any photos yet. Kazuya admitted he hadn't. Kanon found it strange, thinking it was a waste for their dad to give him such a nice camera. Kanon then took the camera and pretended to snap a photo of her older brother, saying that she wanted to be photographed. Kazuya agreed and Kanon felt really happy, striking a pose right away. The next morning was bright and clear. Many students were walking to school, including Kazuya, who attended Kuba High School. It was a private school that could be found almost anywhere. But what set it apart was the freedom given to its students to express their passions through club activities like tennis, basketball, swimming, and more. The woman who had been cycling earlier and greeted Kazuya appeared surprised and quickly apologized. It turned out she was a new teacher at the school and had accidentally entered the wrong classroom on her first day. Kazuya, who was in that class, just smiled. Now he knew that the woman who greeted him earlier that morning was the new teacher. It had been 40 days since Kazuya last attended school. He felt like nothing had changed at all. Time continued to pass as it always had. Same class, same uniform, and the same school. Kazuya picked up his camera, then ran through the hallway, almost bumping into a girl. In Kazuya's mind, the only thing that might be different now was that he saw everyone as a photo subject. Kazuya ran past the sports field and spotted a girl practicing rhythmic gymnastics. He quickly took the opportunity to snap a few photos. He managed to capture several shots before the girl noticed him. They made eye contact and both exchanged greetings. Kazuya explained that he was out and about looking for photo subjects, and then he saw her dancing. They started chatting outside. The girl was surprised when she found out Kazuya was Kanon's older brother. Kazuya also realized that the girl was Kanon's friend. She introduced herself as Sakuramai from Class 1. The two of them shared some laughs, enjoying each other's company. Meanwhile, a boy was watching them, hiding behind a board. It seemed like neither Kazuya nor Mei noticed him. The scene shifted back to the classroom, where everyone was focused on the lesson being taught by their teacher. Kazuya, however, seemed drowsy as he followed along. During the break, Kazuya used his camera to snap a few pictures of various subjects. He felt much braver when holding the camera, like it helped him break out of his monotonous life. While taking a few shots, Kazuya happened to spot a woman on the rooftop holding a camera, photographing something as well. Suddenly, Kazuya heard a girl call him Dart Soon. He recognized the voice. It was Minoka. She was frustrated because she had called Dart Soon several times, but Kazuya had responded. Kazuya then told her he'd prefer it if she stopped calling him Dart Soon. Nanoka replied that the nickname suited him since he played darts so often. The name just fit. Nanoka then asked what Kazuya was holding and if he had picked up a new hobby. Kazuya explained that it was a camera his dad gave him. Nanoka asked if Kazuya had taken a lot of pictures with it, and he said yes. Then Nanoka told Kazuya that it seemed like he had forgotten to photograph something important. Naturally, Kazuya was confused and asked what she meant. Nanoka teased him, saying, a healthy, kind, beautiful girl, shining in the prime of her youth, playing softball. Kazuya looked around, trying to find the person Nanoka was talking about. Seeing his reaction, Nanoka told him there was no need to be shy. He was allowed to take as many photos of her as he wanted. Kazuya finally understood Nanoka wanted to be photographed. She immediately brightened up, excited to be the subject of Kazuya's camera. He agreed, and Nanoka began posing with her softball moves for him to capture. However, in the end, she stuck out her tongue and made a silly face at the camera. Kazuya was startled, but that funny face was the shot he managed to capture. Nanoka laughed, saying she was just messing around and felt like doing it. She then said goodbye and headed back to practice softball again. Kazuya looked at the photo he had just taken. Suddenly, someone jumped from a tree into the bushes. It was a mysterious-looking guy wearing glasses. Kazuya and the guy then walked down the school hallway. The guy said he admired Kazuya for getting people to ask him to take their pictures. He said Kazuya had a bright future with his camera. He also apologized for following Kazuya's every move that day. Kazuya responded that he hadn't noticed at all. The guy then advised Kazuya to broaden his perspective and be aware of his surroundings. Don't just focus on the object right in front of him. The guy finally introduced himself as Kuda Hiromichi from Class 3 and said he was the president of the photography club. Hiromichi then offered Kazuya a spot in the photography club, believing that Kazuya had great potential. Kazuya was surprised by this offer. Hiromichi encouraged Kazuya to think about how the daily routines at Kuba High School seemed to be stuck. The students worked hard on their club activities, rushing home afterward. Many lived similar lives day in and day out. But Hiromichi imagined how a strong gust of wind could blow through, bringing change and excitement. Hiromichi then invited Kazuya into the photography club room. Kazuya scanned the room from one side to the other. He wondered why there was a curtain dividing the space in two. Hiromichi told him not to worry about it. Other club members were there too. A boy named Nakagawa Ida from Class 2 introduced himself. He was a short guy with a special talent for taking low-angle shots. His nickname was Low Angle Nakagawa. Then another boy introduced himself as Azuma Takahashi from Class 2. Due to his height, he was skilled at taking photos from high angles. His nickname was Boo Blimps Azuma. Hiromichi explained that borderline eroticism is aesthetics. Borderline eroticism is art. Then, another member suddenly appeared mysteriously in the middle of the group. It was a girl named Achita from Class 1, and her nickname was Stealthy Cheetah. Kazuya introduced himself, and Hiromichi explained that Uchita's specialty was stealth photography. It's about blending into the background and photographing an unsuspecting subject. Kazuya commented that it sounded a lot like sneak photography, but Hiromichi and the others quickly rejected that term. They clarified that they didn't hide their cameras in suitcases or plastic bags, and they only took pictures of people in public areas designated by the school. Plus, they always got the subject's consent before releasing the photos. Kazuya was still a bit unsure, but he began to understand more. Proudly, Hiromichi asked, "What do you think? Isn't everyone here amazing?" He invited Kazuya to become part of the club. Hiromichi also mentioned that he knew Kazuya was childhood friends with Mimi Haruka, who was a school idol. Plus, Kazuya was close friends with Masaki Nanoka, a star of the softball club, and Sakura Mae from the rhythmic gymnastics club. Kazuya hesitated. Hiromichi kept urging him, saying that the photography club was a lot of fun. Kazuya started to imagine all the girls at school he could photograph, but his fantasy was interrupted when a girl suddenly appeared from behind the curtain. She introduced herself as Kurabayashi Katsumi from Class 3, the president of the photo club. She told Hiromichi to stop teasing Kazuya. Of course, Kazuya was annoyed since Katsumi had barged into the club room without warning. Kazuya became even more confused. It turned out there were two clubs, the photography club and the photo club. Katsumi explained that she had spoken to the student council president to create the photo club because Hiromichi didn't want her in the photography club with him. That's why all the official school photos were taken by the photo club. Kazuya concluded that this meant the photo club was the official one. Hiromichi immediately protested, saying that photography wasn't about being official or not. He also argued that the photography club was a well-known, respectable group. Katsumi agreed, adding that the photo club didn't have enough members. One of their members, Ru, was already in the volleyball club, so technically they weren't even an official club anymore. Ru, who was standing next to Katsumi, mentioned that she could quit the volleyball club anytime, but Katsumi wouldn't let her. Katsumi then asked Kazuya if he wanted to join the photo club. That way, they would be one step closer to becoming an official club. Katsumi then talked about the beauty of nature, which would be a perfect subject for them to photograph together. Hearing this, Hiromichi protested, saying that there's nothing more beautiful than borderline eroticism. Katsumi wasn't backing down either and pointed out that all the members of the photo club were girls, meaning Kazuya would have a fun time with them. Hiromichi and Katsumi both exclaimed that they were pursuing true beauty. Kazuya became more confused as everyone awaited his answer. Kazuya started imagining, did he really want to take pictures of the beautiful girls at his school? Was that even allowed? Ru then pulled Katsumi aside, saying that boys shouldn't be in the photo club. Katsumi argued that gender had nothing to do with someone's love for photography. Hiromichi continued to persuade Kazuya, saying that an artist must always express what's inside. Kazuya felt the pressure mounting as he tried to decide which club to choose. Deep down, Kazuya thought he didn't want to take weird photos, but he was still very confused. Finally, Kazuya said that he felt like joining the photography club. Hiromichi and Nakagawa were thrilled, welcoming him with open arms. Nakagawa said he was ready to teach Kazuya all about cameras and everything he needed to know. All the members of the photography club warmly accepted him. Katsumi respected Kazuya's decision. She mentioned that Kazuya had fallen for Hiromichi's persuasion, but she added that he shouldn't hesitate to say hi to her. Even though they were in different clubs, their love for photography was the same. Kazuya thanked her. Katsumi and Ru then pulled the curtain and returned to their club room. Kazuya sat down thinking he might have just joined a crazy club. He started worrying, was he going to be okay? Later that afternoon, Kazuya was walking down the school hallway looking at the photos on his camera. By chance, he bumped into a girl walking down the stairs. Kazuya realized she was the girl he had seen earlier on the rooftop, taking pictures of the sky. The girl confirmed this and mentioned that she was a member of the photo club. Hearing that, Kazuya immediately knew this girl was Hikari. Surprised, Hikari turned and asked how Kazuya knew her name. Kazuya replied that it was a long story. Kazuya continued walking through the hallway when he noticed a girl slumped over a desk. He recognized her as Tomo, but what confused him was that she was sitting at Haruka's desk. Tomo slowly stood up and looked out the window with a weary expression. Kazuya was shocked to see that Tomo was crying. Still gazing outside, Tomo asked if Kazuya could keep a secret. She wanted him to promise not to tell anyone, especially Haruka, that she had been crying at Haruka's desk. Kazuya agreed, but his curiosity got the better of him and he asked why. That afternoon, Haruka was visible from the classroom window competing in a tennis match on the court below. Tomo then asked if Kazuya could keep it a secret if she told him why. With a determined look, Kazuya agreed. The morning at Kuba High School was bustling. All the students were busy with their own activities. Everyone seemed happy and energetic, except for Kazuya. That morning he yawned, feeling sleepy. Kazuya noticed something unusual. Tomoe, who normally used the front entrance, was taking a detour through the back door of the classroom, even though her seat was at the front. Kazuya remembered the promise he made to keep the secret that Tomoe had shared with him. The scene then shifted to the sports field, where Tomoe was. Meanwhile, Kazuya was in the classroom, changing into his gym clothes. Just then, Nanoka burst into the room, calling out Dartsum, but quickly covered her eyes when she realized Kazuya was in the middle of changing. Kazuya approached her after seeing what happened. Nanoka explained that she wanted to borrow Kazuya's English textbook. Normally, she borrowed from Haruka, whose notes were neat and easy to understand. However, Nanoka couldn't find her, so she decided to borrow Kazuya's book instead. Kazuya agreed and told Nanoka to grab the book from his locker. Nonoka went in and took the book, and Kazuya walked out of the classroom. In a hurry, Kazuya ran down the stairs. By accident, he bumped into Miroto and almost collided with her. Naturally, Miroto was annoyed, and Kazuya quickly apologized. Kazuya knew that the woman named Miroto was the president of the student council. Miroto scolded him for not following the school rule of walking on the right side of the hallway. Kazuya was confused. He didn't know such a rule existed. Miroto explained that the rule was stated in the first student handbook in the section on school life, which said, "No running in the hallways or on the stairs. Always stay on the right side." Miroto then suggested that Kazuya read the student handbook. Kazuya was impressed and asked if Miroto had memorized all the school rules. Miroto confirmed this, as she was the student council president after all. They then parted ways, each heading to their own destination. Kazuya muttered to himself, saying that Miroto was too strict. Near the shoe locker, Haruka was seen panting with a softball equipment bag by her side. Seeing this, Kazuya offered to help, but Haruka said she could carry it herself. Kazuya felt embarrassed when his stomach suddenly growled. Haruka grew concerned, but Kazuya reassured her that he was just hungry because he hadn't had breakfast yet. Smiling, Haruka asked if it was true that Kazuya had joined the photography club, mentioning that Kamen had told her about it. Kazuya confirmed it. Haruka knew this was the first time Kazuya had joined a club. He hadn't been in any clubs since elementary or middle school. Kazuya explained that the club president had been so persistent in inviting him that he couldn't refuse. Haruka laughed and asked what the photography club did. After thinking for a moment, Kazuya said that the club president mentioned something about preserving the youth of the students. Haruka remarked that it sounded amazing and offered Kazuya the chance to photograph the tennis club whenever he wanted, as she wanted him to preserve her youth as well. As Haruka was about to lift her softball equipment bag, something caught her eye. It was a bright reflection. Kazuya noticed it too, and after investigating, they realized it was coming from Nakagawa and Azuma's cameras. They were secretly taking pictures. Kazuya quickly moved to shield Haruka from their cameras. Nakagawa and Azuma were frustrated by this. Swiftly, Kazuya decided to help Haruka carry the softball equipment bag to the field. Nakagawa and Azuma could only watch them in silence from behind the shoe locker. Internally, Kazuya remarked that the photography club was much more suspicious than he had expected. Once outside, Haruka noticed that Kazuya was still wearing his indoor shoes. She kindly suggested he change into his outdoor shoes. Haruka's friends had already run over to help her carry the softball equipment. Kazuya said goodbye and ran off. Haruka thanked him as he left. Kazuya couldn't focus during the soccer game because he was so hungry, which caused him to get hit in the face by the ball, leaving him with a bruised face. Unexpectedly, Kenan walked by, laughing at her older brother. Without even looking, Kazuya knew it was Kenan just from hearing the bell charm on her phone. Holding his stomach, Kazuya said he was so hungry that his stomach was growling. Feeling sorry for him, Kenan pulled out a pack of jelly for him to drink. Of course, Kazuya was thrilled and eagerly drank it. Kenan had originally brought it for herself to enjoy after her morning practice, but luckily for Kazuya, she hadn't gotten around to it yet. As Kazuya was enjoying the jelly, Miroto suddenly approached him. Startled, Kazuya almost choked. Miroto then recited the school rule that prohibits eating and drinking outside of break times and said it should only be done in the cafeteria. She told Kazuya to finish the jelly in the cafeteria and then walked off. Kenan was impressed by how strict Miroto was when it came to enforcing school rules. Kazuya glanced at the bell charm Kenan had, admiring the fact that she still carried it around. Kenan explained that of course she kept it because it was a gift from her older brother when she was very little. It was incredibly valuable to her. After school, Kazuya took pictures of Mai as she practiced rhythmic gymnastics. Mai noticed him and asked him to talk outside. She informed Kazuya that members of the photography club were banned from the gym during the rhythmic gymnastics practice. Surprised, Kazuya asked why. Mai explained that some of the photography club members kept taking pictures of them from embarrassing angles. Kazuya immediately thought of Nakagawa and Azuma doing that. He assured Mai that he wasn't involved in any of that. Mai was relieved, saying she trusted that Kazuya wouldn't take photos like that. Kazuya felt a bit frustrated since he had just started learning photography, but now he had to deal with these restrictions. Mai said she would speak to the club president and request special permission for Kazuya to enter. Kazuya was both shocked and happy to hear this. Mai hurried off to talk to the club president right away. As soon as Mai went back into the room, Nakagawa suddenly appeared from behind a board saying Kazuya did a great job. Nakagawa had been hiding there the whole time. He mentioned that so far, Mai and Kano were the two most popular girls. Nakagawa congratulated Kazuya for getting special permission to bypass the ban. Kazuya asked who Mae Kano was, figuring that Mae referred to Sakura Mai, but who was Kano? Nakagawa answered that it was, of course, Meta Kanon. Hearing this, Kazuya was so shocked he nearly choked. Nakagawa was confused by Kazuya's reaction, so Kazuya explained that Kanon was his younger sister. Naturally, Nakagawa was stunned. He then jokingly imagined what it would be like to marry Kanon, realizing that in such a case, he would have to call Kazuya Onisama Big Brother. Kazuya was horrified and immediately protested. Kazuya felt like a lot had changed since he started photography. It wasn't just because of the camera, but more because he had become more proactive in approaching people to take pictures of them. It felt like a completely different world. At dusk, Kazuya was walking and happened to see Hikari taking pictures of the shoe lockers. Kazuya greeted her. Hikari kept snapping photos toward the light source behind the door. Kazuya then asked for the photos she just took used the backlight technique. Hikari confirmed it. Kazuya mentioned that he couldn't get good shots using that technique. Everything he took turned out too dark. He asked if there was a trick to it. Hikari explained that there wasn't anything wrong with dark photos as long as the atmosphere was captured. She also suggested that Kazuya try using exposure compensation. Hearing this, Kazuya gained a better understanding. Kazuya said goodbye as he received a message on his phone from Hiromichi. The message said that after school tomorrow, all photography club members were encouraged to gather in the club room for an emergency meeting. Kazuya had a bad feeling about it. The next morning arrived and Kazuya couldn't sleep all night because he was worried about the meeting. He was anxious about what they might say to him. While walking to class, Kazuya accidentally ran into Haruka, who was still wearing her swimsuit and holding a towel. She explained that she had forgotten her headband and came back to get it. Knowing this, Kazuya wanted to leave quickly, but Haruka stopped him. She said she could be a model for Kazuya. Kazuya looked puzzled and asked if Haruka wanted to be photographed in her swimsuit. Haruka confirmed this, reasoning that graver idols often wear swimsuits during photo shoots. Kazuya hesitated. Haruka admitted feeling a little shy but promised to do her best because she wanted to help Kazuya. Kazuya then asked why Haruka was going to such lengths for him. Haruka said that she wanted to spend more time with Kazuya like they used to. She wanted him to notice her. The photo session took place at a pool. Haruka posed in various ways for the photos. Kazuya, while taking the pictures, was amazed by how good they turned out. Haruka seemed nervous and shy, but she pushed through. Eventually, Kazuya felt they had taken enough photos. Haruka asked Kazuya not to show the pictures to anyone, as she had done it all just for him. Kazuya agreed. Haruka said goodbye and ran off, leaving Kazuya behind as he continued to look at the photos. Outside, Yoshida smiled as if she knew everything that had just happened. The scene then shifted to the classroom, where Haruka stood reading a literary piece aloud. Kazuya watched her and smiled, remembering the previous day when Tomo shared a secret with him. Tomo had confessed that she wanted to be like Haruka, beautiful, kind, skilled at tennis, smart, and admired by many. Tomo believed that if she sat in Haruka's seat and saw the world from her perspective, she would change. However, it didn't work at all. Tomo grew so jealous that she suddenly began to cry. Haruka had always been kind to her, which made Tomo feel cruel. Hearing this, Kazuya lowered his head in silence, understanding how Tomo felt. Suddenly, the teacher hit Kazuya's head with a book, snapping him out of his daydream. After school, as planned, the photography club held a meeting. Hiromichi led the meeting and all club members were present: Nakagawa, Azuma, Uchida, and Kazuya. The topic of discussion was the Miss Photogenic contest. Everyone seemed excited, except for Kazuya, who looked confused. Before the meeting officially started, Hiromichi instructed Uchida to check if anyone was in the photo club room. Uchida checked, and luckily, no one was there. Nakagawa then explained that Miss Photogenic was a tradition in the photography club, where they would decide who looked the most beautiful in photos and showcase their findings at the annual school festival. Hearing this, Kazuya felt sorry for them. Hiromichi then announced that this year's Miss Photogenic was Haruka. Kazuya was immediately shocked. Hiromichi said he had chosen her after careful consideration, calling her the true heroine. All the club members seemed to agree, except Kazuya, who didn't know what to do. Reluctantly, he accepted the decision. The next morning arrived. Kazuya's teacher complained because the classroom trash hadn't been taken out. Since it was Kazuya's turn to do it the day before, he took the trash out. After he finished putting it in its place, Kazuya thought this was an unusual opportunity to be allowed outside while class was still going on. so he decided to have a little fun before heading back to class. As Kazuya walked along the school wall, he noticed someone climbing it. Quickly, he grabbed his camera to snap some pictures. The climber turned out to be Miroto, the student council president. She panicked and told Kazuya to stop taking pictures. Then, out of nowhere, Miroto lost her balance and fell, accidentally landing on Kazuya. Both of them were startled. Luckily, neither of them was seriously hurt. While dusting off her legs, Miroto glared at Kazuya, telling him he better not have taken any pictures of her skirt. Kazuya assured her that he would never do such a thing. Kazuya then asked why Miroto was climbing the wall to get into the school. She looked nervous and unsure of how to answer. With a teasing smile, Kazuya guessed that Miroto was trying to sneak into school because she didn't want anyone to know she was late, so she chose to climb the wall instead. At first, Miroto denied it, but she couldn't come up with a believable excuse. In the end, she admitted that she was wrong to sneak into the school in such an illicit way. Hearing this, Kazuya felt a strange sensation he couldn't quite explain. To him, it felt oddly satisfying to beat Miroto at her own game. It was as if Miroto was now in the palm of his hand. Miroto then begged Kazuya not to tell anyone about what had happened. If people found out, her reputation as the student council president would be ruined. Kazuya promised he wouldn't tell anyone. Miroto seemed relieved and thanked him. She also asked Kazuya to delete the photos he had just taken. Kazuya refused, saying it would be a shame to erase them. As Kazuya turned to leave, he said goodbye. Miroto tried to stop him, but Kazuya kept walking, assuring her he wouldn't show the photos to anyone. Smiling to himself, Kazuya realized that fate had handed him his secret. He now knew Miroto's hidden flawed side. Nanoka seemed to be in a big hurry as she dashed down the stairs. When she reached the landing, she decided to jump to get to the bottom faster. But unexpectedly, Kazuya was coming up the stairs. He was shocked to see Nanoka leaping like that. The situation couldn't be avoided, and Nanoka couldn't dodge in time, resulting in their lips accidentally touching. Both of them tumbled down the stairs, wincing in pain. Nanoka apologized for not being careful. She also complained that her teeth hurt. Kazuya, surprised, mentioned that his teeth were hurting too. He thought maybe their teeth had collided. Nanoka confirmed it. That's when Kazuya realized they had just kissed. Nanoka also noticed it but simply smiled. Kazuya worried about her, but she said that maybe this was just how her first kiss story was meant to happen. Nanoka also admitted she was happy her first kiss was with Kazuya. Naturally, Kazuya was shocked to hear this. Nanoka then explained that she would have been sad if it had happened with someone she hated. But with Kazuya, it was okay. Time passed and Nakagawa, Azuma, and Kazuya were by the pool. Nakagawa was annoyed because there weren't any girls around. He had really wanted to take pictures of girls in swimsuits. He thought maybe they had arrived too early. Azuma speculated that maybe the girls weren't swimming that day. Nakagawa became disheartened and lost all enthusiasm. They decided to leave and Kazuya walked ahead quickly, not wanting anyone to see him there. Then, unexpectedly, he ran into Rina. Rina asked why Kazuya was there as she was sure it was her class's turn to use the pool. Kazuya made an excuse, saying he had left something behind. Suddenly from behind, an impatient Nakagawa pushed Kazuya to make him walk faster. Kazuya stumbled and nearly fell, accidentally grabbing Rina's melons, causing both of them to panic as Rina screamed. Kazuya immediately apologized, shocked that such a thing could happen to him. Rina tried to calm the situation, telling him it was okay because she knew it wasn't intentional. Kazuya could only nod. Nakagawa and Azuma were also stunned to see Rina there. When asked what they were doing there, Nakagawa quickly lied, saying they were helping Kazuya look for his lost camera lens cap. Rina accepted the explanation and admired their friendship. Kazuya and the others quickly left the area. As they walked, Nakagawa asked if it was true that Kazuya had actually grabbed Rina's melons. Kazuya replied, maybe. They were shocked and immediately jealous. Afterward, Kazuya was walking alone down the school hallway. He ran into Kanan and Mai, and they greeted each other. Kanan then reminded Mai that she wanted to tell Kazuya something. Mai told Kazuya that he had been granted permission to photograph the Rhythmic Gymnastics Club. Mai said she had successfully convinced the club president to let Kazuya in. Kazuya thanked Mai, but she also warned him to be careful. If he tried anything inappropriate, he would be banned from entering again. Kazuya agreed. Kanan and Mai said goodbye and hurried to class so they wouldn't be late. Kazuya continued walking, unaware that Uchida had overheard everything from nearby. In the school garden, Nakagawa, Azuma, and Uchida congratulated Kazuya. Naturally, Kazuya was confused about why he was being congratulated. Nakagawa explained that they had received intel from a spy that Kazuya had gotten permission to photograph the Rhythmic Gymnastics Club. Kazuya was shocked, wondering how they could know about that. Nakagawa then pulled out 2 magazines as a reference for Kazuya. When Kazuya saw the covers, he thought they were adult magazines. Nakagawa denied it, saying they were just cosplay magazines. The models were intentionally photographed that way. Nakagawa went on, suggesting that Kazuya should learn what makes a good photo by reading those magazines. That was the least Nakagawa and the others could do for him. They were eagerly awaiting Kazuya's sexy shots of Mai. Hesitantly, Kazuya held the 2 magazines, but Nakagawa, Azuma, and Uchida were already walking away. Reluctantly, Kazuya accepted them. Later that night, Kazuya was in his room flipping through the magazines. He wanted to have some photos he could be proud of for their photography exhibition. Determined, Kazuya made up his mind to take more pictures to achieve that goal. The next day, Miroto was practicing diving at the school pool. She didn't realize Kazuya was nearby. Miroto scolded Kazuya for being at the pool while the girls were having their swim class. Kazuya defended himself, saying it was already lunchtime. Miroto hadn't realized she had been there for too long. Kazuya then complimented Miroto's diving, saying she moved like a professional diver. Miroto revealed that she had been a competitive diver at the school, part of the swim club, until last year. She had to quit because her duties as student council president became too overwhelming. Kazuya thought it was a shame, but Miroto said it was fine since there were far better divers in Japan and she wasn't that great. Kazuya expressed regret that he hadn't been able to photograph Miroto during her competitions. To him, her dives were impressive. Kazuya's gaze moved from her feet to her head, making Miroto embarrassed, and she covered her body with her hands. Kazuya quickly apologized. He remarked that Miroto, who was usually strict about enforcing school rules, seemed so different now. Then Kazuya asked if he could take a picture of Miroto in her swimsuit. Naturally, Miroto was shocked and refused, feeling embarrassed. But then Kazuya shouted illicit entry. Miroto panicked, thinking Kazuya was blackmailing her. She nervously asked what would happen if she refused. Kazuya didn't respond. Miroto continued, asking if Kazuya would make a poster out of the photo and stick it outside the staff room or email it to all the students. Kazuya actually said that sounded like a good idea. Miroto became even more annoyed, thinking Kazuya should have already come up with that plan himself. Kazuya repeated that he wanted to take Miroto's picture. Reluctantly, Miroto agreed. She asked what kind of pose Kazuya wanted. After thinking for a moment, Kazuya said, if possible, he'd like a sexy pose. Miroto was, of course, shocked and angrily protested, but feeling like she had no choice, she went along with it. Kazuya started taking pictures of Miroto with his camera. Miroto posed the best she could, though she was clearly feeling embarrassed. As she posed, Miroto told Kazuya to hurry up and take the photos. She didn't want to stay in those poses for too long. Pose after pose, Miroto continued while Kazuya commented that maybe things would be better if Miroto weren't so strict. Miroto retorted that cameras don't capture words, all while still urging Kazuya to finish quickly. Kazuya managed to take plenty of shots of Miroto in various poses. At one point, they locked eyes for a moment before suddenly, Hiromichi showed up, clapping his hands in admiration for Kazuya. Hiromichi also remarked that he never expected Miroto to have such a daring side, considering her usually strict and disciplined personality. Miroto tried to excuse herself, saying there was a reason for everything before running off and telling Kazuya not to show those photos to anyone. Kazuya agreed. Hiromichi again expressed his admiration for Kazuya, surprised that Kazuya could get Miroto to follow his directions. Kazuya just said that it was a long story. Hiromichi could tell Kazuya was hiding something and mentioned that maybe Kazuya's enthusiasm had reminded Miroto how she used to be. Hiromichi shared that Miroto was burdened by all her parents' expectations. Kazuya remained silent, listening to Hiromichi's story. The scene then shifted to inside the school, where Kazuya was walking with Haruka. Haruka was impressed, noticing that Kazuya was reading a photography book. She thought that Kazuya was really serious about photography now. Kazuya said that photography had become something he really enjoyed. Haruka's friend called for her, so she rushed off but told Kazuya to let her know if he ever wanted her to model for him again. Kazuya agreed and thanked her. At the end of the school hallway, Nakagawa and Azuma were seen mopping the floor until it was sparkling clean. After finishing, they walked past Kazuya and mentioned that tomorrow they would start Operation Mimi Haruka. This surprised and panicked Kazuya, who immediately started thinking of a way to stop it. That night, Kazuya was in his room, scribbling in his notebook. trying to figure out how to prevent Operation Mimi Haruka. He thought about it late into the night until he finally fell asleep. The next morning, Kazuya walked to school, yawning the whole way. He regretted falling asleep before figuring anything out, but remained determined to stop Operation Mimi Haruka. Near the river, Kazuya spotted Hikari taking pictures of the lake's scenery. When asked, Hikari explained that she was photographing the water's surface and told Kazuya not to mind her. She said this was the perfect time to capture the sparkle of the water's reflection in the morning sunlight. Kazuya continued walking and told Hikari to show him her photos sometime. The scene then shifted to the classroom where Rina was struggling to reach something from the top of a cabinet. She asked anyone nearby for help. Coincidentally, Kazuya was passing by and quickly helped her out. Rina mentioned that she was trying to get a steamer, but there was a box in the way. Kazuya held it steady while Rina climbed onto a stool to grab the steamer. Unavoidably, Kazuya found himself face to face with Rina's melons, making his face turn bright red as he couldn't look away. After she successfully retrieved the item, Rina thanked Kazuya. She then offered him a warm cup of tea. Rina explained that she needed the steamer for the Cooking Research Society, but Kazuya didn't see any other members around. Rina then admitted that she was the only member of the club. Kazuya was surprised and asked if the school allowed forming a club by yourself. Rina replied that it was possible as long as the student council approved it. She added that it was more like a hobby than an official club, and the student council president was very supportive. Rina said it would be amazing if students' recipes could be passed down to future generations. She also mentioned that cooking was just a hobby for her. Kazuya's phone buzzed, but when he looked at the message, he chose to ignore it. Rina then offered him one of the scones she had baked. However, Kazuya's hands were full, so Rina decided to feed it to him herself. Kazuya eagerly ate the scone, complimenting its delicious taste. This made Rina really happy. She proudly told him that everything was made with 100% natural ingredients, making it both tasty and thick. Kazuya agreed, especially with her comment about it being thick. The school bell rang as Kazuya was mopping the classroom floor. He received a message from Hiromichi stating that Operation Mimi Haruka had begun. Kazuya was tasked with bringing the target to the club room immediately. In his mind, Kazuya vowed to protect Haruka even if it cost him his life. He asked Haruka to help him carry the trash, and they walked down the hall, passing the shiny, spotless floors that Nakagawa and Azuma had cleaned the day before. As they passed the photography club room, Kazuya paused for a moment, looking around. Haruka, meanwhile, marveled at how clean the floor was, shiny enough to reflect her image. Kazuya shared her thoughts, thinking that someone could easily slip on it. That's when Kazuya realized something. He told Haruka to go back to class, but as he rushed towards her, he slipped instead. At that exact moment, Nakagawa and Azuma jumped out of hiding with a camera. As Kazuya fell, he desperately tried to block Haruka's lower half to prevent them from photographing her underwear through the floor's reflection. Unfortunately, this only led to Kazuya accidentally seeing Haruka's underwear from below. The scene then shifted to the photography club room, where the members were holding an emergency meeting. Kazuya sat there, looking like someone who was both flustered and amused. Hiromichi wanted to discuss why they kept running into problems whenever they tried to take photos of this year's Miss Photogenic Haruka. A flashback showed Haruka trying to wake Kazuya, who had fainted on the floor. Nakagawa commented that it was all Kazuya's fault for messing things up. However, Hiromichi understood since Kazuya was still new to the club. Hiromichi then decided to change their approach. Each club member would watch the target and look for any opportunity to take photos. Kazuya was shocked to hear this, especially concerning Machida. He knew this would be a much bigger problem now because he had no idea when Uchida or the others might go after Haruka. Determined, Kazuya resolved to protect Haruka no matter what. Later that afternoon, Kazuya was in the rhythmic gymnastics club room, taking some photos. He was practicing what he had learned from the magazine he'd been reading. Mai asked if the photos were turning out well, and Kazuya confirmed that they were. He thought the pictures might be useful for Mai at some point. Kazuya also promised to give the photos to Kanon later that evening. Mai thanked him for taking the time to photograph her. She then shared that she had started practicing rhythmic gymnastics after graduating from middle school, so she wasn't yet familiar with all the moves. Rhythmic gymnastics, after all, is a competition of aesthetics. So far, Mai had only been focused on the technical aspects. She still didn't quite know how to perform movements that looked graceful. That's why Mai wanted to keep practicing. Kazuya assured her that he would continue to support her. He then left the club room, concerned that he might be disturbing Mai by staying too long. With that, he headed home. Kazuya was taking pictures of the clouds in the sky when suddenly Kanon ran toward him and jumped, hugging him tightly and covering his face. She was still wearing her swimsuit and was soaking wet. Kanon was terrified because a bee had been chasing her. Kazuya couldn't see anything because Kanon's body was blocking his view. He told Kanon to calm down. After calming down a bit, Kanon climbed off Kazuya, still crying in fear. With a straight face, Kazuya asked where the bee was. Kanon looked around, but there wasn't a single bee in sight. Kazuya was slightly annoyed with Kanon, so she apologized. Kazuya forgave her and told Kanon to quickly change her clothes so she wouldn't be late for class. Kanon then left. Kazuya's clothes and face were now wet because of her, but he could only accept it, looking up at the sky and enjoying the breeze. Now Kazuya was in class. He stretched, feeling exhausted at the end of the lesson. Kazuya noticed Tomo walking around the back of the classroom even though her seat was in the front. It still puzzled him. Tomo left the classroom and Kazuya got up to follow her. As he walked past the stairs, he lost sight of her. He couldn't see Tomoe anywhere down the corridor. Instead, he saw Miroto chatting with her friends, which made Kazuya panic and leave the area. He went to hide in the outdoor corridor, and that's when he spotted Tomo sitting on the stairs. Kazuya greeted her and asked if she came to this spot often. Tomo confirmed it. When Kazuya asked what book she was reading, Tomo said it was a book of poetry. Kazuya was curious why she wasn't reading it in the classroom. Tomo explained that if she read in the classroom, she'd become the center of attention. According to her, nothing good comes from being conspicuous. Tomo mentioned that she was used to being alone in that spot. Kazuya just nodded in understanding before saying goodbye. As he left, Tomo reminded Kazuya about a promise he had made. Kazuya nodded and promised to keep it. At home, Kanon was happily watching her favorite magical girl show on TV. Meanwhile, in his room, Kazuya was holding a magazine that Nakagawa had lent him. Kazuya felt like he needed to return the suspicious magazine as soon as possible. The next morning at school, Kazuya had the magazine in his bag, but he worried about the possibility of a bag inspection. So he decided to put it in his locker. In the corridor, Kanon and Nanoka were playing around with a broom and a ball of paper, pretending to play softball. Just as Kanon was about to throw the paper, she stopped and looked panicked. Miroto was standing behind Nanoka, watching them. Nanoka was startled when Miroto scolded them for playing in the school corridor, saying it was dangerous for others. While they were being scolded, Kazuya happened to walk by. Nanoka and Kanon quickly ran to him for protection. They were both scared of Miroto's intense expression when she was angry. Kazuya smiled and told them to leave it to him. He walked up to Miroto and asked her not to punish them. However, Miroto insisted that Nanoka and Kanon should still be punished for breaking the rules. Then, while placing his hand on Miroto's shoulder, Kazuya whispered illicit entry. Miroto stepped back and asked if Kazuya was blackmailing her again. She then said that Kazuya's blackmail no longer applied, as enforcing the school's rules was her responsibility. Until the end, Miroto was determined to be perfect in her role. Kazuya then asked, "Perfect? What about the illicit entry?" Miroto gave in and told Kanon and Nanoka that they were forgiven. Of course, Kanon and Nanoka were thrilled. Nanoka even said that Kazuya was like a hero to her. Miroto then said that she would get back at Kazuya someday and walked away. In the afternoon, the students went about their activities and the atmosphere was peaceful. But behind the school, a new teacher named Momoko seemed confused while holding a trash bag in her hand. It looked like she was lost. Kazuya, who happened to be passing by, greeted the teacher and asked what she was doing there. The teacher explained that she was told to take out the trash behind the school, but she had forgotten where the trash area was. Kazuya guessed that the teacher had gotten lost, but she denied it, saying she just didn't know where she was at the moment and had only taken the wrong path. In his mind, Kazuya thought that's exactly what being lost meant. Kazuya then helped the teacher by carrying the trash bag for her. As they walked together, the teacher commented, "Co-ed schools sure are nice." Kazuya asked if she had gone to an all-girls school before. She explained that while her college was co-ed, she had attended all-girls schools from grade school through high school. After a short walk, they finally reached the trash area, and the teacher was very thankful to Kazuya. Kazuya then asked if the teacher knew the way back. She confidently replied that she did. Kazuya had his doubts. The teacher then laughed and admitted she wouldn't mind if Kazuya accompanied her, just to be sure. They both laughed out loud. The scene then shifted to the photography club room. Kazuya was surprised when he was assigned to photograph cosplayers. Hiromuki explained that soon there would be a fan magazine sale near the mall, and they were supposed to capture the beautiful scenes of the cosplayers. Nakagawa added that they could blend in with the crowd by wearing the armbands he had provided. After the meeting, they all left the club room together. Nakagawa whispered to Kazuya, reminding him to return the magazine he had borrowed. Kazuya nodded, saying he'd already planned to return it that day. Later that afternoon, Kazuya was trying to retrieve the magazine from his locker, but it got stuck. He struggled to pull it out when suddenly, Haruka greeted him. Startled, Kazuya quickly closed his locker and turned around. Haruka noticed his suspicious behavior and asked if there was something in his shoe locker. Kazuya denied it, saying there was nothing there. Haruka then bent down to put on her shoes, and that's when Kazuya caught a glimpse of her cleavage. He thought for a moment that it was an opportunity to take a photo. Then he realized that in such a situation, it was possible that one of the photography club members might be there to photograph Haruka. Kazuya became suspicious that Uchida might be hiding behind the lockers. He then decided to protect Haruka and invited her to walk home with him. Haruka looked very happy with the invitation. Kazuya was also surprised when Haruka suddenly took his hand and pulled him to walk together. After they left, it turned out Kazuya was right. Uchida had been there, holding a camera. But Uchida thought Kazuya knew about his presence and had blocked him from photographing Haruka. On their way home, Kazuya was at a loss for words, unsure of what to talk about with Haruka. He awkwardly asked whether she preferred tea or coffee. Immediately regretting it, Kazuya felt like he had asked something random. Haruka smiled and answered that she liked tea more because coffee kept her awake at night. She laughed, saying it made her feel like a little kid. Kazuya apologized for asking such a weird question. Haruka reassured him that it was fine, and in fact, questions like that reminded her of their childhood, when they used to walk home together to pick up Kanan from school since they lived nearby. Haruka then shared that Kanan played tennis better than she did today. She was sure that one day Kanan would surpass her, but Kazuya doubted that. In his eyes, Haruka had always been great at sports, even since they were kids. She was even better than most boys her age back then. Haruka stopped walking and said she was happy that Kazuya became a photographer. She thought that Kazuya seemed more lively since joining the photography club, just like when he was into soccer. Kazuya agreed, but admitted he still wasn't so sure. He had just started and there was a chance he might give up halfway, just like with other things before. But for him, the gestures of a photo subject through the viewfinder, the radiance and expressions that only exist in that fleeting moment he captures, just thinking about it made his heart race. Then there's the excitement of getting a great shot, the frustration when a shot isn't as good, things that could be put into words. Kazuya was determined to get better at it. Haruka began to understand his passion. The next day, under the stairs, Kanan asked Kazuya to check something on her thigh. She lifted her skirt even higher, which immediately caused Kazuya to stop her, worried her underwear might show. Kanan said she couldn't see it herself, so she wanted Kazuya to take a picture and show her. Kazuya did as she asked. Kanan finally believed there was nothing wrong with her thigh after seeing the picture, though she still complained about feeling some pain. She had fallen on her butt during PE class. Kanan then began browsing other photos on Kazuya's camera and accidentally came across a picture of Maroto in a swimsuit. Kazuya panicked and tried to grab the camera back, but Kanan managed to dodge him. She got annoyed, suspecting that Kazuya and Maroto had a special relationship, which was why Maroto allowed Kazuya to take that photo. Kazuya quickly denied it. Kanan seemed jealous, feeling like her brother was cheating on her even though he already had her. Students passing by grew suspicious as they heard the two arguing under the stairs. In the end, Kazuya got his camera back and was relieved he hadn't lent it to Hiromichi yet. After that incident, Kazuya felt the need to quickly transfer the photos to his computer. While walking through the corridor, Kazuya saw Haruka ahead of him with Nakagawa already set up to take her picture. Kazuya called out to Haruka and started chatting with her, which annoyed Nakagawa. Similarly, when Haruka was playing tennis, Kazuya blocked Izuma's attempt to sneak a shot of Haruka's underwear. He kept protecting Haruka from the cameras pointed at her. The scene then shifted to the library, where Maroto was visibly annoyed because Kazuya had asked her to do his homework. Maroto didn't want to, but Kazuya blackmailed her again, forcing her to do it. She reluctantly started working on Kazuya's homework. Kazuya was amazed as he watched Maroto finish it so quickly. Maroto remarked that all the questions were extremely easy. Later in the afternoon, Kazuya was once again trying to retrieve a magazine from his locker. He was startled, accidentally throwing the magazine into the air when someone surprised him from behind. Kazuya panicked. The person who startled him turned out to be Mai. She apologized and walked over to pick up the magazine from the floor. Kazuya couldn't do anything. Mai eventually realized it was an inappropriate magazine. Kazuya quickly tried to explain that it wasn't what she thought. He insisted that the magazine wasn't his. Mai smirked slyly, clearly not believing him. Kazuya further claimed that the members of the photography club had forced him to read it. He kept trying to convince Mai, but she still didn't believe him and threatened to report it to the club president. Kazuya stopped her, saying that if the club president found out, he wouldn't be allowed to enter the rhythmic gymnastics club room anymore. Mai said that it was Kazuya's fault and that she was disappointed in him. Kazuya quickly responded, saying he'd do anything for Mai. Unexpectedly, Mai turned around with a big smile. She thought for a moment and then agreed. Mai promised to keep the secret as long as Kazuya would do anything for her. She also said that if Kazuya didn't come to her practice, she'd feel lonely. Kazuya was relieved and let out a deep breath. Then Mai said she would keep the magazine. Of course, Kazuya was shocked. Seeing his reaction, Mai asked if Kazuya wanted to keep it. Awkwardly, Kazuya denied it. Mai laughed and walked away. Deep down, Kazuya felt unlucky because now Mai had something to blackmail him with. He started thinking that it might be karma for blackmailing Muroto earlier. Later that night, Kazuya was going through his photos on his computer. He realized that he had taken too many close-up shots. He should have used different styles of photography. Kazuya felt like he needed to learn a lot more. The next day, cosplayers were posing at an event. Many photographers were there to capture the scene. Kazuya and the other photography club members were already on location as well. They agreed to split up and try to get their best shots individually. However, Kazuya felt pessimistic, thinking he couldn't do his best. Then, Hiramaki approached him and offered to show him how it's done. Hiramaki started photographing the #1 cosplayer, Alice, in various poses. Hiramaki told Kazuya that in situations like this, they should take as many photos as possible since they only have a short window of opportunity. Kazuya then mustered up the courage to ask Alice to look his way and strike a pose. Alice happily did her signature pose, fitting the character she was cosplaying. Kazuya eagerly snapped the photos, and that was his first experience photographing a cosplayer. On another occasion, Kazuya visited the place where Mai usually practiced rhythmic gymnastics. Unexpectedly, there were many girls practicing there too. Kazuya saw plenty of photo opportunities. He approached Nanoka, who was also there, and asked what all the girls were doing in that place. Nanoka replied that they were competing to see who had the most flexible body. Unhappy with that answer, a girl named Katsumi scolded Nanoka. Katsumi explained that they were just doing basic training. She then told Kazuya to start photographing everything. Kazuya happily complied and began taking pictures of all their activities. He captured their stretches, whether done in pairs or individually. By chance, Kazuya also noticed that Uchida was there, stretching with Hikari. Internally, Kazuya remarked that Uchida's body was surprisingly sexy. When his lens focused on Uchida's face, he noticed she had a mole under her eye. But when he tried to photograph it, Uchida seemed to avoid the camera. Kazuya continued capturing every moment he could. He felt incredibly grateful. He thought about how many paths there were for him to take, and he was determined to find one that led to even more opportunities. Where, when, and how. It all came together from unlimited possibilities. You wouldn't find them unless you tried. Yes, the possibilities were endless. Kazuya felt that his encounter with the camera had changed him. It made him interact more with others and become closer to them. Haruka was in class, reading a book aloud. The teacher and her classmates listened intently to her reading. The teacher complimented her, saying that she had read well, and now it was Kazuya's turn. However, Kazuya was daydreaming and appeared zoned out when the teacher called on him. The teacher then told Kazuya to stop glancing at Haruka all the time and focus on the lesson. Panicked, Kazuya quickly searched for the right page in the book that he was supposed to read. Haruka, noticing Kazuya had been staring at her, blushed slightly in embarrassment. The next day, Kazuya saw Haruka sitting in the school hallway. Concerned, he approached her. Haruka told him that she was feeling a little dizzy. This immediately reminded Kazuya of a similar incident from their childhood when they were playing soccer at the park. Haruka had also been sitting down, clutching her chest in pain. Haruka, who appeared to be in discomfort, mentioned that this sometimes happens to her, possibly because of anemia. She felt that if she stayed in that position, she would eventually feel better. However, Kazuya suggested that she lie down in the infirmary. He offered to take her there and even offered to carry her. He squatted down and invited her to climb onto his back. Haruka smiled, her face flushing as Kazuya began walking while carrying her. They eventually arrived at the infirmary, where Haruka lay down on the bed while Kazuya sat in a chair beside her. Kazuya reminded her that she didn't need to attend practice that day and he would inform Kanon. Although Haruka wanted practice, Kazuya insisted that she rest for now. He even promised to pick her up later when it was time to go home. Hearing this, Haruka agreed and closed her eyes to rest. Kazuya got up from his chair and was about to close the curtains when, from a distance, he noticed Azuma holding a camera. Kazuya knew Azuma was planning to take a picture of Haruka. He couldn't believe Azuma wanted to photograph a girl who wasn't feeling well. Using hand signals, Kazuya told Azuma to leave and Azuma walked away. Suddenly, Haruka said she wouldn't mind if Kazuya took a picture of her while she was asleep. Still worried, Kazuya told Haruka that it was better for her to just rest for now and that he wouldn't feel right photographing her while she was sleeping. Haruka nodded and closed her eyes again. Kazuya was reminded of that time when they were playing soccer. When he kicked the ball toward her, Haruka suddenly curled up in pain, clutching her chest. Worried, Kazuya ran over to help her stand up, but he accidentally touched her chest, causing him to jump back in shock. It was at that moment that Kazuya realized Haruka was a girl. Back to the present, it was already night and Haruka and Kazuya were walking down the street together. Haruka thanked him for staying with her all day. She once again offered to let him take her picture if he wanted to, saying she would be happy to do it. The two then parted ways, with Haruka running toward her house and Kazuya walking in the opposite direction. Deep down, Kazuya was happy to see Haruka like that, but he wasn't entirely sure how he felt. The next day, three girls were talking about Kazuya and Haruka's relationship. They often saw the two of them together, but in their opinion, Haruka and Kazuya weren't a good match. One of the girls even wondered how Haruka and Kazuya could have been childhood friends. She thought maybe Kazuya was handsome when he was younger. Another girl chimed in, saying Haruka deserved someone better than Kazuya. Kazuya happened to overhear their conversation, and he was shocked by what they were saying. The girls laughed, thinking it was funny. Kazuya walked away feeling disheartened and unexpectedly. Ichigo was also there and saw the whole thing. Kazuya stood alone on the rooftop, deep in thought. Nakagawa and Azuma noticed Kazuya's sudden cold demeanor and found it strange. Kazuya walked down the school hallway alone. In his mind, he remembered a similar situation happening back in middle school. A rumor had spread just like now. Kazuya knew this could happen again. Many people teased him, saying he wasn't good enough for Haruka. Meanwhile, in a quiet corner of the school, Haruka was with a boy. He mentioned that he had heard Haruka had a childhood friend. Rumor had it that her childhood friend was in the same class as her and that they spent a lot of time together. Haruka asked if he meant Kazuya. If so, Haruka admitted that they were often together. The boy then asked if they were dating. Haruka responded that they weren't, but before she could finish her sentence, the boy said he was relieved. Haruka was startled by his comment. The boy then suggested that Haruka forget about Kazuya and date him instead. Kazuya happened to be nearby and overheard everything, leaving him stunned. The boy went on to say that he was the star player of the school's soccer club and that Haruka was the standout player of the tennis club. He thought they would be a perfect match. Haruka just stared at him blankly. When he asked if Haruka liked him, she said it wasn't about liking or not. Haruka wanted to continue, but seeing her hesitation, the boy interrupted and said she didn't need to answer right away, giving her time to think. He then walked away. Haruka wanted to say more to him, so she chased after him. But as she ran, she accidentally bumped into Kazuya, who had been standing silently behind a wall the whole time. Haruka quickly explained that there was nothing going on between her and the boy. They had just been talking for a moment. She also clarified that the boy wasn't her friend. But Kazuya responded that there was nothing wrong with it. He thought they made a good match and everyone would agree if Haruka dated him. Haruka was caught off guard by Kazuya's words, which made her both angry and sad. She then told Kazuya that she didn't understand what he was feeling. Haruka turned and ran off, calling Kazuya stupid as she left. Kazuya could only stand there, leaning against the wall with a blank stare. As it turned out, Nakagawa and Azuma were nearby and had witnessed everything that happened. Later that afternoon, Haruka went to the playground alone while Kazuya sat in his room depressed, thinking about what had happened earlier that day. The next day, Kazuya was cleaning his camera in the photography club room. Nakagawa and Azuma were silently watching him. The atmosphere was quiet and Hiramachi also just sat cross-legged, not saying anything. Then suddenly, Kanan walked into the room, approached Kazuya, and asked her older brother if he knew where Haruka was. Kanan said that Haruka hadn't been seen all day and she had seemed gloomy lately. Kanan was worried, wondering what was going on with Haruka, especially since Haruka wasn't answering her calls either. Hearing this, Kazuya suddenly pictured Haruka in pain, clutching her chest. Panic and concern started to rise in him. He immediately got up from his seat and tried calling Haruka. After several attempts, there was still no answer from her. Kazuya quickly ran out of the room to search for Haruka. At the same time, there was a message from Hiramachi sent to the members of both the photography club and the photo club. The message said that for now, they needed to find Haruka and ensure the safety of their photogenic queen. In a hurry, Kazuya ran all over the school, asking other students if they had seen her, but to no avail. Since he couldn't find her on school grounds, he decided to run outside and continue the search there. As Kazuya was running, he remembered a moment from their childhood when he had accidentally elbowed Haruka in the chest while they were playing soccer. Kazuya had been really worried back then, but Haruka reassured him that she was fine. Kazuya then told her that maybe they should stop playing together because they weren't kids anymore. He thought boys and girls should play separately. Haruka cried and said she wanted to keep playing soccer. Kazuya suggested she join the girls' soccer team, confident that she would become a great player. But that wasn't what Haruka wanted to hear, and feeling frustrated, she pushed Kazuya and ran off. At the same time, other members of the photography and photo clubs were also trying to find Haruka. Another flashback occurred. Haruka, as a little girl, was sulking and hiding in a dollhouse-shaped playhouse at the park. Kazuya had tried to coax her to come out because it was getting late, but Haruka refused. She said that if she couldn't be with Kazuya, she would feel lonely. Kazuya also recalled how Haruka had shyly offered to be his model for a photo shoot, even though she was embarrassed. It was already nighttime, but Kazuya still couldn't find Haruka. He ran through the streets, searching desperately. He felt like an idiot for not understanding anything, what Haruka was feeling or even what he himself was feeling. But deep down, Kazuya promised himself that he wouldn't hide anymore. In the end, Kazuya went to the playground where he and Haruka used to play together, hoping to find her there. But she wasn't there either. That night, it started to rain. Kazuya, now half defeated, wandered the streets, drenched since he didn't have an umbrella. When he reached Haruka's house, he noticed that her bedroom light had just been turned on. Then, out of the corner of his eye, he saw Haruka pass by her slightly open window. Seeing this, Kazuya smiled, relieved that Haruka was okay. Haruka walked up to her window and closed the curtain, turning her face away. She sat down for a moment after closing it. Then she peeked through the window again, but didn't see anyone outside. The next day at school, class went on as usual. The teacher was reading a book in front of the class and the students were listening. Kazuya, sitting in the back, kept glancing at Haruka, who was seated at the front. After class, Kazuya and the other members of the photography club gathered in the club room for a meeting, just like the members of the photo club who were gathered in their room. In the shoe locker room, Haruka was putting on her shoes alone. Katsumi came over and greeted her, asking if she had a moment to talk. Haruka nodded in agreement. The two of them then sat together in a corner behind the school. Katsumi asked why Haruka hadn't been practicing tennis for the past few days. Haruka could only apologize. Katsumi then said that Haruka wasn't the only one. Haruka looked confused. Katsumi continued, explaining that Haruka wasn't the only one who struggles to express her feelings, so she should try to understand. Haruka still didn't get it. Katsumi went on, saying that Haruka might not realize this, but there are people out there working their hardest for her. Someone out there is willing to go the extra mile for her. Someone out there is doing his best to stop others from taking inappropriate photos of her. As she walked out of school, Nanoka was waiting at the gate for Haruka. When Haruka showed up, Nanoka greeted her right away. She thanked Haruka while handing her a bag. Nanoka also asked why Haruka hadn't been coming to tennis practice anymore, which was worrying everyone. Haruka stayed silent. Nanoka then said that, judging by Haruka's expression, she was sure it was because of Kazuya. Haruka couldn't respond. Nanoka continued, telling her that she should trust Kazuya. Nanoka believed that Haruka knew Kazuya better than anyone. When Haruka got home, she took a shower and saw a few messages on her phone afterward. The first one was from Kenan, telling her that Kazuya hadn't come home yet. Kenan asked Haruka to let her know if her older brother called. Kenan also apologized if Kazuya had caused Haruka any trouble and asked her to give him some time. Katsumi had sent Haruka a message as well, apologizing if she had been a bit harsh earlier. But Katsumi insisted that Haruka should trust both Kazuya and her own feelings. Mai had also messaged Haruka, saying that she missed practicing tennis with her. Haruka smiled as she read these messages. She lay down on her bed, thinking about everything. While she was resting, another message came in. This time, it was from Kazuya. He said he would wait for her at their old spot. In the message, Kazuya also asked her to give him a second chance. That very night, Kazuya was at the playground where he and Haruka used to play together. That night, Haruka fulfilled Kazuya's request to meet at the playground, where they had created many memories together. The two reminisced about playing ball until the evening, and Haruka even mentioned how she once wished she had been born a boy. Kazuya also reminded Haruka of the time he accidentally elbowed her in the chest, admitting his foolishness. To make things worse, just yesterday he had absent-mindedly told Haruka to go out with another guy. Realizing all of his mistakes, Kazuya sincerely apologized to Haruka. She then asked if he would ever leave her again, to which Kazuya promised he wouldn't. Hearing this, Haruka was overjoyed and jumped into Kazuya's arms for a hug. The night passed and their relationship returned to normal, just like before. The following afternoon, Haruka and Kazuya returned to the playground. Haruka wanted to enter a bear-shaped playhouse she used to love as a child. However, when she tried to squeeze in, it became clear her body no longer fit. She got stuck at her waist, unable to pass through the small opening. Determined not to give up, Haruka told Kazuya to push her from behind. Shocked by the request, Kazuya hesitated. After inspecting the tight space, he admitted there was no way she could fit. Understanding his point, Haruka backed out of the small opening. Once free, Haruka stood up and smiled. Kazuya didn't want to miss the moment, so he snapped a picture of her. Haruka commented on how Kazuya had really grown to love photography. Kazuya agreed, acknowledging that while he was still a beginner, photography had become a hobby he felt comfortable with and wanted to pursue. Haruka was happy to hear this, though she also confessed feeling a little jealous that Kazuya had found something he was passionate about. Kazuya reminded her that she loved tennis, didn't she? Haruka agreed, but admitted she wasn't as enthusiastic about it as Kazuya was about photography. Kazuya then offered to show Haruka the photos he had taken. He was considering displaying his best shots at the upcoming school festival. Haruka happily agreed to check them out, which made Kazuya feel flattered and thankful. He then took a few more photos of Haruka, and she happily posed for him. Kazuya felt lucky to capture Haruka in such a natural state, as if he had truly captured her essence. To him, this was the heart of photography. The next day, Kanan burst into Kazuya's room, rushing him to get dressed. She reminded her older brother that he had a date with Haruka today. Kazuya dismissed it, insisting it wasn't a date and that he still had plenty of time. Kanan scolded him, saying that being late for a date was practically a crime. She also told him about a fortune she heard today, which said, "You'll be luckier if you give yourself enough time." Kanan urged Kazuya to hurry, adding that the fortune also warned about troublesome friends. Time passed and Haruka was already waiting at the agreed spot. Kazuya arrived slightly late, but Haruka forgave him, admitting she had arrived too early anyway. She confessed her heart was racing in anticipation of the day. Seeing how beautiful Haruka looked in her casual outfit, Kazuya asked if he could take a picture of her, and she agreed. Soon after, Nakagawa and Azuma were out for a stroll, enjoying the bright, sunny weather. They were thrilled because it was the perfect day for both high-angle and low-angle photography. When they spotted Kazuya photographing Haruka, they couldn't help but feel envious. Nakagawa asked if he could take some photos of Haruka as well. Excited, they both ran toward Kazuya and Haruka. Kazuya quickly moved to protect Haruka, thinking this might be the troublesome friends the fortune had warned him about. As they ran closer, Uchida suddenly appeared in front of them, merely smiling. Nakagawa and Azuma pleaded to be allowed to photograph Haruka, but when they opened their eyes, they realized Kazuya, Haruka, and Uchida had already disappeared. The scene then shifts to a beautiful beach. Haruka looks very cheerful, standing on the beach in her pink swimsuit. Covering her chest with her hands, Haruka says not to keep staring at her because she feels embarrassed. Kazuya, who is already ready with his camera in hand, apologizes. He also feels really happy to be at the beach with Haruka. Haruka agrees and says that she is also glad to be here with Kazuya. The two of them then run off to enjoy the ocean together, jumping around in excitement, splashing water at each other, and of course, Kazuya keeps taking pictures of Haruka in her swimsuit. Haruka strikes several cute poses, and Kazuya manages to capture them perfectly. Naturally, Kazuya is thrilled to get so many great shots of Haruka on the beach. After taking photos, Haruka starts juggling a ball. She then offers Kazuya to play ball with her. Kazuya is a bit startled by the ball. Haruka then challenges Kazuya, saying that whoever loses has to buy ice cream. Haruka dribbles the ball toward Kazuya. Kazuya is ready to block her and stop the ball. However, he loses focus, his eyes drawn toward Haruka's chest. Kazuya is reminded of a traumatic memory from when he accidentally hurt Haruka with his elbow. Haruka easily gets past Kazuya without any resistance. Of course, Haruka is happy to have defeated Kazuya and immediately demands ice cream. But Kazuya just stands there frozen. He then says he can't play ball anymore. Haruka feels sad and confused, asking why. Kazuya simply responds, "You should know." Annoyed, Haruka grabs Kazuya's hand and drags him to a quieter spot. Haruka then asks if Kazuya is still worried about what happened when they were kids. Kazuya shakes his head, saying he just couldn't move. According to him, they're not kids anymore and can't touch Haruka so casually. Hearing that, Haruka leans against Kazuya, which naturally shocks him. Haruka then says that she can touch him like this, so why does Kazuya think she's too precious? Kazuya lifts his head, unsure of what to say. Haruka then turns around and tells Kazuya to touch her chest. Haruka says she won't get mad. In fact, she wants him to touch her. Haruka wants to prove that she hasn't changed at all, that she's still the same as when they were kids. Of course, Kazuya is confused and asks if it's really okay. Haruka reassures him again. Kazuya nods, gathers his courage, and slowly moves his hand toward Haruka's chest. He touches it. Kazuya steps back when Haruka makes a sound, afraid he was too rough, but Haruka dismisses it and says she's fine. Autumn arrives and the atmosphere is peaceful. The falling leaves add harmony to the scene. Nonoka looks excited as she listens to Haruka tell a story. Kanan and Mai are happily playing and laughing together. Hikari is busy photographing the beautiful autumn scenery. Meanwhile, Kazuya and Haruka are alone on the rooftop, enjoying a meal prepared by Haruka. That night, Haruka calls Kazuya. Haruka says she can't sleep because she keeps thinking about Kazuya. When she closes her eyes, all she can see is Kazuya's face, and she constantly hears his voice in her ears. So Haruka thought that if she could hear Kazuya's voice, maybe she'd be able to sleep. Kazuya understands and tells Haruka she can call him whenever she wants. Haruka is touched and thanks him. Then the school festival day arrives. The students head to school as usual, and so does Kazuya. He feels that photography has truly changed his life. He's become more active than he ever expected. And today, all of his emotions will be poured into this moment. Every photo exhibited at the school festival was taken with all of his skill and dedication. In a room, all the members of the photography club had gathered, along with Haruka, who was also there. Hiromichi then announced the winner of this year's Miss Photogenic contest. Of course, Haruka was confused about what that meant. Hiromichi explained that Haruka had been chosen by the photography club as this year's Miss Photogenic. A black curtain was then pulled back. Behind it was a photo of Haruka taken by Kazuya titled Wish. Haruka thought it was a beautiful title, but she felt a little embarrassed to see such a large picture of herself. Then, all the black curtains were lowered, revealing many more pictures of Haruka on display. Haruka became even more confused. Hiromichi explained that he and all the photography club members had done everything they could to capture Haruka's beauty. All the photos were taken in secret, knowing that Haruka might not want her pictures displayed and would probably refuse the Miss Photogenic title. However, Hiromichi hoped Haruka would accept it. Haruka smiled and nodded. Hiromichi and the other members of the photography club expressed their thanks and felt very grateful for her understanding. Later in class, Kanan, Mai, Nonoka, and the other girls opened a cafe and served visitors while dressed in bunny costumes. Many other students came to see the photography club's exhibition and the photo club's displays. Elsewhere, visitors continued to enjoy the school festival. Eventually, the school festival came to an end. That afternoon, Kazuya and Haruka returned to the playground as they usually did. Haruka seemed to really like the bear statue at the playground, commenting that it had been watching them every day. Kazuya then mentioned that Haruka looked very different now, appearing more feminine. However, Kazuya also said that deep down she hadn't changed at all. Haruka responded by saying that she had worked hard to become more feminine. They both sat on the swings together, watching the sunset. They reflected on how much had happened and how they were now spending time together like they used to. Kazuya got off the swing and confessed that ever since they were children, he had always loved Haruka. He repeatedly told her that he loved her. Haruka's eyes filled with tears at this confession, and she said that she was incredibly happy. Haruka also admitted that she had loved Kazuya ever since they were kids, and now her dream had come true. They hugged each other tightly. Kazuya apologized for making Haruka wait so long, but Haruka told him it didn't matter because now they had finally expressed their feelings to each other. Kazuya admitted that he felt foolish for not being true to himself. Then he asked Haruka for permission to kiss her. Haruka was surprised. Kazuya assured her that he would never leave her again. Haruka said that she wouldn't leave Kazuya either. And then they kissed. A flashback scene occurred showing Kazuya and Haruka as children. Kazuya was trying to coax Haruka out of a bear-shaped playhouse, telling her they needed to go home because it was getting late. However, Haruka refused to leave. She said that Kazuya had many friends, so he wouldn't understand. According to Haruka, Kazuya didn't know what it felt like to be left behind. Kazuya promised that he would always stay with her, even if all his friends left. Haruka asked why he would do that. Kazuya hesitated for a moment before mumbling, "Because I love you." Haruka, still inside the bear-shaped playhouse, couldn't hear what Kazuya said clearly. Then Kazuya shouted, "Because I really like you." Haruka heard his declaration. She came out and asked if Kazuya really loved her. Kazuya confirmed it, saying it over and over again until Haruka believed him and felt incredibly happy. Haruka also told Kazuya that they both must like each other because she loved him too. She thought Kazuya was cool and kind. Kazuya blushed in embarrassment. Kazuya then told Haruka that she should be more feminine, like wearing skirts and growing her hair out. According to Kazuya, if Haruka did that, she would make a lot of friends and feel happier, so she wouldn't feel left behind anymore. Kazuya also told her that she was cute. Hearing this, Haruka's face immediately turned red. She felt very flattered because no one had ever said anything like that to her before. Kazuya thought it made sense since, at the time, Haruka was dressed more like a boy. Haruka then asked Kazuya, "If I wear skirts and grow my hair out, will I be even cuter?" Kazuya nodded, confident that she would be. Haruka added, "So if I become cuter, then you'll want to marry me, right?" She promised to work on being more feminine. Haruka confirmed again, telling Kazuya that if she became cuter, he would have to marry her. Kazuya agreed and said that one day he would marry her. Haruka became really motivated and promised that she would try her best to become cuter. Back in the present, Haruka felt that Kazuya had chosen her over everyone else and tried to save her. And now love had blossomed. As long as they were together, they would always create more love. At that time, Kazuya accidentally ran into Miroto while she was practicing at the swimming pool. Kazuya greeted her, and there was also Miss Momoko, who was swimming as well. Kazuya mentioned that he was looking to take some good photos for this year's exhibition. As she got out of the water, Miroto said that taking photos was fine, but you shouldn't take anything weird. Kazuya was confused by what she meant. Then Miroto said she needed to leave for a moment to grab a prop. Hearing this, Miss Momoko offered to get it since she was older, but Miroto refused, concerned that Miss Momoko might get lost again. Miroto then walked past Kazuya to get the prop. Now Kazuya was left at the pool with only Miss Momoko. He asked if she was learning how to swim. Miss Momoko confirms, saying she was doing it to get credentials for teaching elementary school. The requirement was that she had to swim 50 meters. That's why Miroto was teaching her how to swim. In return, Miss Momoko was helping Miroto with her studies. Miss Momoko wanted to ease Miroto's burden, as she was very busy being the student council president and even had to quit the swim club. Soon after, it started pouring rain. Kazuya ran to take shelter inside the school building. It turned out Miroto was also sheltering there, standing near Kazuya. The two of them were stuck together. Their clothes were soaking wet, and without thinking, Kazuya glanced at Miroto in her wet uniform. Then suddenly, Kazuya snapped a picture of her. Miroto noticed and immediately protested, scolding Kazuya. But Kazuya casually responded with illicit entry, leaving Miroto speechless. Frustrated yet resigned, Miroto reluctantly allowed Kazuya to photograph her. Kazuya then asked her to pose. Of course, Miroto was shocked and reluctant to do it, afraid someone else might see them. But she couldn't do anything about it, so in the end, she posed for Kazuya's camera. Miroto's instincts were right. Hiramiki happened to pass by and saw them. Miroto continued to strike various poses Kazuya asked for, still wearing her wet uniform. Kazuya eagerly snapped photos of her, feeling thrilled to get so many shots of Miroto in her wet uniform. After posing several times, Miroto started feeling strange, noticing that she was getting used to posing like that. The rain finally stopped and the sky cleared up. Kazuya smiled to himself as he walked, holding his camera. He felt lucky, thinking he now had something to use as leverage to make Miroto do something for him. Then, by chance, Kazuya spotted Miroto sitting alone on the school rooftop. Curious, he approached her. Miroto looked deep in thought as she sat there. Kazuya told her that break time was over, so they should be heading back to class. But Miroto said it was fine and asked Kazuya to leave her alone. Surprised, Kazuya asked why. Miroto didn't answer. Instead, she invited him to take a photo of her as the student council president skipping class on the rooftop. She joked that it would make great blackmail material. Hearing that, Kazuya felt sad. He asked why Miroto was acting differently, not like her usual self. Then, with a bit of anger, Miroto told Kazuya to leave her alone. Kazuya refused to leave, though. Instead, he grabbed Muroto's hand and pulled her along. Muroto was confused about why Kazuya was doing this. They eventually ended up at the back wall of the school. Kazuya told Muroto that her way of skipping class wasn't quite right. Skipping in a place like the rooftop wasn't fun. Muroto was surprised and confused by Kazuya's words. She asked him, "What's the right way?" Kazuya said they should do something more exciting than just an illicit entry. They were going to do an illicit exit. Muroto was shocked. Kazuya then crouched down, offering himself as a step for her to climb over the wall. Still stunned, Muroto felt she couldn't do it. Kazuya then promised that if she skipped with him, he would delete all of the photos of her from their illicit entry. Muroto hesitated, confused about why Kazuya was going so far for her. Kazuya then said that Muroto wasn't acting like herself and he didn't like it. He firmly told her to step on his back again. Muroto, feeling touched and with her eyes lighting up, gathered her courage and decided to go through with it. Nakagawa and Azuma accidentally saw them from a distance. They were stunned for a moment, confused by what Kazuya and Muroto were doing. But then Nakagawa and Azuma decided to follow them. Eventually, Kazuya and Muroto arrived at Game Center. Muroto sighed, feeling like she couldn't believe that as the student council president, she was in such a place because she was ditching class. Kazuya tried to calm her down, saying that they were already there, so they might as well have fun. Kazuya then took a photo of Muroto, which of course made her annoyed. He also asked Muroto to pose, which made her suspicious. She started to wonder if Kazuya would delete the photos from her illicit entry, but still use the illicit exit photos he was taking down to blackmail her. However, Kazuya promised he wouldn't do that and asked Muroto to trust him. Muroto believed him and posed for the photos. Afterward, they tried playing some of the games there, and they both seemed to enjoy themselves. Meanwhile, Nakagawa and Azuma were secretly watching them from the game center. After playing, Kazuya and Muroto shared some crepes. Kazuya mentioned that eating crepes while everyone else was studying made it taste even better. Muroto agreed. She then asked what Kazuya really thought of her. Kazuya responded by saying that Muroto was a rule-abiding student council president and one of the most talented students Kuba High School had ever seen. Muroto laughed at that. She said her grades hadn't been that good back then. Naturally, Kazuya was surprised. Muroto explained that while she loved swimming, she didn't enjoy studying. Kazuya then asked why she turned out the way she is now. Muroto told him that she wanted to follow in her father's footsteps to become a doctor, so she had to study hard. She often attended cram school even on weekends, staying there late into the night. Eventually, she graduated at the top of her class, which made her very happy. Muroto admitted that now she was just pretending to be smart. Kazuya then remarked that her grades were still good, but Muroto laughed and said Kazuya would be shocked if he saw her recent final exam results. Muroto confessed that she was exhausted. She had even quit swimming to focus on studying. She felt like she couldn't give up on either being the student council president or becoming a doctor, but she realized she couldn't do both. Muroto said this while lowering her head. Suddenly, an older woman recognized Muroto, startling her as she tried to remember who the woman was. Then it hit her. Kazuya wasn't sure what was going on between them. The woman then told Kazuya that Muroto had saved someone's life. She explained that about a month ago, on a Monday morning, an elderly man collapsed on the street. Everyone around panicked, unsure of what to do. But Muroto immediately rushed over and took him to her family's hospital. She even stayed with the man. The woman believed that without Muroto, there's no telling what might have happened to him. Kazuya recalled that Monday morning. It was the same day Muroto had been late and decided to climb the wall to sneak into school. The woman once again thanked Muroto, telling her she was a very kind girl. But Muroto denied it, saying she wasn't as good as people thought. In the end, the woman thanked Muroto on behalf of everyone who had been there that day and left. After the woman left, Muroto seemed downcast, leaving Kazuya confused. Afterward, the two of them wandered around, visiting a jewelry store, a bead shop, and even watching a movie at the cinema. By the time night fell, Muroto thanked Kazuya. Kazuya also felt happy to have skipped school with her. Muroto said this was the first and last time she would ever do something like that. Kazuya just laughed at her. Then Muroto told Kazuya that he didn't need to delete the photos he had taken of her. She said she had come to terms with reality. The side of her that loves swimming, the side that wants to be a doctor, the side that arrived late to school. That was her true self. She realized this after having fun with Kazuya, so there was no need to delete the photos. Muroto said goodbye and started walking home. It was then that Kazuya realized the only thing connecting them had disappeared. Kazuya then shouted, calling out to Miroto, who was already a bit far from him. It turned out Kazuya ended up asking her out on a date for the next day. The next morning, Kazuya waited for Miroto while reviewing the photos he had taken with his camera. Before long, Miroto approached him with a sweet smile. The two of them then headed to a large aquarium, walking together before catching the dolphin show. Miroto was thrilled to see the swimming fish, and Kazuya felt the same, that there was something he wanted to photograph. Miroto swimming. Kazuya regretted not being able to take pictures of Miroto when she was still part of the swim club. He would have had plenty of photos of her by now. Embarrassed, Miroto told him that she wouldn't have minded if he had. Hearing that, Kazuya became excited and immediately asked when he could photograph her. Miroto was surprised, and before she could answer, an announcement came on that the dolphin show was about to start. Miroto quickly ran toward it. The dolphin show began, and Kazuya and Miroto sat in the audience. Miroto then shared a story about how she had once been saved by a dolphin. Naturally, Kazuya was shocked to hear this, but Miroto clarified that it wasn't a rescue from drowning. Rather, when she was feeling sad, her father took her to a dolphin show, and she wasn't sad anymore. It was as if her sadness had vanished. She confessed that she started learning how to swim because she wanted to be like the dolphins. Kazuya then asked, "Why didn't you just tell me at the time?" referring to the time Miroto had been late because she helped someone. She didn't have to sneak into school like she did back then. Miroto was confused by the question and only now realized why she hadn't told the truth at the time. Kazuya remained silent, just gazing at her. By the afternoon, Kazuya and Miroto were sitting together on the train, both quiet and seemingly lost in thought. In a park, they watched a beautiful sunset together. Kazuya then admitted that at first he thought Miroto was stubborn, but now he knew more about her. Hearing this, Miroto said she was happy Kazuya had invited her to skip school. She added that she didn't mind if Kazuya knew everything about her now. Miroto realized that parts of her would be perfect but incomplete if she kept holding back. That's why she would face everything from now on. Smiling, she thanked Kazuya for encouraging her. Then Kazuya confessed his feelings to Miroto. Miroto didn't immediately respond to his confession. Instead, she said that from now on, she would be pursuing her dream, a dream she had since she was a child, which was to become a doctor. She passionately shouted her dream into the horizon, declaring that she would work hard to get into medical school. Kazuya cheered her on, and Miroto felt happy and lucky because of it. Miroto then approached Kazuya and asked him to hug her. Of course, Kazuya was shocked. He stood frozen, unable to say anything. Miroto explained that when she was a child, dolphins were enough to lift her spirits, but now she wasn't a child anymore. Gathering his courage, Kazuya, with a flushed face, embraced Miroto. At that moment, Kazuya told her again that he loved her. Miroto replied that she loved him too. Kazuya hugged her even tighter and promised to stay with her until she graduated. Whispering, Miroto asked Kazuya to kiss her gently. Kazuya did so, and they shared a tender kiss. Kazuya once again encouraged Miroto, saying he was certain her dream would come true. The next day at school, Kazuya was heading down the stairs when he got a text on his phone. It was from Miroto, asking him to come to the school pool if he wasn't busy. Miroto was already at the pool, practicing her diving skills. When Kazuya arrived, he took pictures of her. He praised Miroto for her perfect dive, and Miroto smiled. She explained that she just wanted to tell Kazuya that she had rejoined the swim club, but Kazuya jokingly said there was no way he could pass up the opportunity to photograph her. Time passed, and Miroto was selected to give the graduation speech at the ceremony. Miroto felt that her hard work had paid off, thanks to Kazuya's unwavering support. That day, Miroto and all the third-year students graduated, including Hiramichi, the photography club president, and Katsumi, a fellow photography club member. Kazuya captured those precious moments with his camera. Seeing him photograph her, Miroto approached Kazuya with tears in her eyes. She felt that Kazuya was the only one who could truly see her for who she was and make her smile. That afternoon, Kazuya was at the school cafeteria during lunch break. He was holding his camera, scanning the surroundings for a good photo opportunity. Accidentally, Kazuya noticed Hikari eating a burger by herself, and he wanted to take a picture of her. Hikari realized that Kazuya was secretly trying to snap a photo of her. She called him out, accusing him of being a stalker. Of course, Kazuya defended himself, saying that Hikari was being too harsh by calling him a stalker. Hikari then asked why he was following her if he wasn't a stalker. Kazuya explained that it was because she made a good photo subject. He then told her that she didn't know how to eat a burger properly. Hikari didn't care, saying that it was because her mouth was small. Kazuya then showed her the correct way to eat a burger by squishing it with his hands. Hikari said that doing so went against her sense of aesthetics. Kazuya teased her, pointing out that she shouldn't say that when she had sauce on her cheek. Kazuya continued, then opened his mouth wide and ate the burger in one bite. Hikari just stared at him in surprise. However, she eventually tried it herself and ate her burger that way. The next day arrived, and the teacher was giving a lesson at the front of the class. Everyone was listening intently except Kazuya, who was pretending to frame the teacher in his hands as if he were photographing her. When the teacher turned around, Kazuya pretended to listen, and his eyes wandered to the window, smiling as he saw Hikari playing catch with other girls. After class ended, Kazuya headed to the shoe locker area, where he ran into Hikari, who was putting her shoes away. Kazuya greeted her, but Hikari seemed busy and ignored him. Kazuya then mentioned that he wanted to take her picture. Surprisingly, Hikari didn't mind. She thought to herself that Kazuya really did love photographing people. Kazuya also knew that Hikari liked taking pictures of everything except people. They then went outside, and Kazuya began snapping photos of Hikari in various poses. Hikari commented that Kazuya should be taking pictures of prettier and cuter people than her. Kazuya replied that wasn't the point of photography and continued taking her pictures. He then said he wanted to capture her smile just once. Hikari firmly refused, saying she didn't want to. Kazuya, confused, asked if she didn't like smiling. As she walked away, Hikari said she also didn't like being photographed. Kazuya could only stand there, watching her leave. Then Nakagawa and Azuma suddenly appeared, teasing Kazuya, saying it looked like he was in big trouble now. Kazuya thought about it and realized they were right. He had never seen Hikari smile. Later on, teacher Momoko thanked Kazuya for helping her take out the trash. Kazuya was surprised, wondering how she had gotten lost again. She only smiled at Kazuya's teasing. When asked, Momoko admitted that she still didn't know the way back, so Kazuya ended up walking her home again. Afterward, in the school garden, Hikari was seen taking pictures of a flower and also of herself. Kazuya, standing behind her, was puzzled because Hikari usually avoided photographing people, but now she was taking pictures of herself. Hikari explained that it was because of what Kazuya had said. It made her curious about how she looked in photos. Hearing that, Kazuya smiled, saying it was a good thing and suggesting that she also try photographing other people like she did earlier. Hikari just responded that she didn't like photographing people. As they walked together, Kazuya became curious and asked why Hikari always talked like that. Hikari explained that whenever she took pictures of someone, they would instantly smile, but those smiles were fake. People would never know if those smiles were truly genuine. Hikari said that she hated seeing fake smiles, which was why she wouldn't smile herself. Kazuya felt sad and confused hearing her explanation. Then Hikari ran off, leaving Kazuya behind. On the bright next day, Kazuya and Hikari went out together to take photos of the beautiful city. However, every time Hikari pointed her camera at something, Kazuya would always manage to sneak his face into the frame. Hikari assumed that Kazuya was bored, but he denied it, saying that this was something new for him since he was usually the one taking pictures of people. Hikari continued to take photos of things that she found visually appealing, but once again, Kazuya kept photobombing her shots. Hikari then mentioned that she loved photographing flowers the most, especially the ones on the side of the road that nobody paid attention to. She added that flowers would never betray her. The next day, Kazuya woke up determined to make Hikari start taking pictures of people. At school, Kazuya had a conversation with Katsumi on the rooftop, sharing Hikari's reason for not wanting to photograph people. Katsumi was curious about it too. Kazuya explained that he wanted to change Hikari's mind about photographing people. To him, not wanting to take pictures of people just because she didn't like smiles seemed a bit gloomy. He was determined to do whatever it took to change that. Katsumi supported Kazuya's determination and suggested asking around the drama club if they knew someone who could help. Later that afternoon, Hikari received a text from Kazuya asking her to meet him behind the school. Curious, she made her way there. To her surprise, Kazuya was already waiting, dressed in a ridiculous flower costume. He eagerly offered her the chance to take his photo. Seeing this, Hikari couldn't help but say, "Aren't you stupid or something?" Kazuya responded, saying that if acting silly could lift her spirits, then he didn't mind being called stupid. However, Hikari simply shrugged and walked away. Kazuya, with all sincerity, expressed his wish for Hikari to take pictures of people. He was willing to do anything for that to happen. Despite his earnestness, Hikari remained indifferent and walked off. Time passed, and even though Kazuya had vowed to change her, he was out of ideas. The season shifted from autumn to winter, but Kazuya refused to give up, even though he felt embarrassed about his lack of progress. While walking alone in the shopping district, Kazuya spotted Hikari walking by herself too. He approached her and noticed that she was taking pictures of a stray cat. Kazuya once again tried to get into the frame, but as expected, Hikari frowned at him. Kazuya asked if Hikari liked taking photos of cats too. As she walked away, Hikari replied that she enjoyed the aura that stray cats gave off. Hearing this gave Kazuya an idea. At another time, Kazuya discussed his plan with the photography club members. He wanted to involve the club in his new plan. Kazuya mentioned that they would need some costumes, but Shida, who was present, said that she knew someone who had the costumes Kazuya was looking for. Katsumi also mentioned that she had a contact who worked at an amusement park and had similar costumes. Meanwhile, Hikari, who was sitting in front of her computer, received a message from Kazuya on her phone. He told her that he had found a cute cat near the mall and invited her to come take pictures of it with him. Near the mall, Ichida was seen spraying something on Azuma, who was dressed in a costume. Ichida mentioned that Azuma needed to act just like a stray cat. Nakagawa was already there, hiding in the gutter, while Kazuya, who was also dressed in a cat costume, was stretching to prepare. Ichida fanned the scent of cat food from a grill, attracting the attention of some stray cats. As Hikari approached the scene, she already suspected something strange was going on, especially when she saw Kazuya in his cat costume. Azuma and Nakagawa, who were all set to sneak pictures of Hikari's panties and chest, failed miserably because a bunch of cats surrounded them. Kazuya, who had already put on the cat costume, started acting as if he was a real cat. He rolled around on the street asking Hikari to take his picture, but every time the cat headpiece kept falling off. Kazuya would put it back on and strike a pose, hoping Hikari would take a shot, but instead, Hikari just laughed. She told Kazuya that he should take off the costume because it was dangerous, but Kazuya wasn't ready to give up, so he asked her again to take his photo. He struck another pose in the cat costume, but it seemed like his efforts were in vain. Eventually, he gave up and took off the costume. Hikari just laughed and said at least it was funny. The next day, Kazuya was panting heavily as he ran to meet Hikari at a bookstore. Hikari laughed when she saw him because Kazuya was still carrying the big cat head from the costume he wore the day before. Kazuya explained that he was late because there was no place to store the giant cat head. After riding the train, the two of them arrived at Kuba Amusement Park. They started walking around trying to pick which rides to go on. On one of the rides, Kazuya looked terrified while Hikari didn't seem fazed at all. She remained as stoic as ever. It was the same when they went through the haunted house ride. Hikari didn't seem scared in the slightest. They continued trying out other rides, but Kazuya looked more and more terrified and nauseous with each extreme ride they took. As they walked by a photo booth, Hikari paused for a moment gazing at it, but then turned her head and kept walking. Finally, they got on the Ferris wheel together. Kazuya told Hikari that they'd be able to see Mount Fuji clearly from up there. Hikari agreed, saying the weather was indeed perfect for it. By the time evening rolled around, they were heading back on the train. While walking together, Kazuya said he had a great time, and Hikari admitted it had been a while since she felt that way. Hikari then invited Kazuya to go somewhere she couldn't visit alone. Kazuya agreed, wondering what kind of place it could be. It turned out Hikari brought him to a hill where they could overlook the city's beautiful lights. She explained she didn't want to go there alone at night. Kazuya understood. Hikari asked him to lend her his camera. She placed it on a tripod and aimed it at the sky. Hikari mentioned that the spot was far from the city's bright lights, making the stars appear much clearer. She also asked Kazuya to hold the shutter connected to the camera. They both sat down on a bench and Hikari thanked him for everything. Kazuya responded by saying he didn't really do anything, it was Hikari who won the day. As they gazed at the stars, Hikari admitted that she felt a little scared. She shared that she had a tendency to daydream a lot when she was a kid. She also loved photographing insects and flowers. But since middle school, the other girls in her class started talking to her. She began getting into conversations about fashion and music, but she was never really interested in those things. Hikari started playing around, dressing up, and smiling. She began to understand more and more of what they were talking about. In reality, she was thrilled to have friends for the first time. She tried to fit in with them. But it turned out that to them, Hikari was just some weird girl. They only wanted to hang out to make themselves look better. They kept bossing her around. It made Hikari so frustrated with them that she decided to stop hanging out with them. After that, they started teasing and bullying her. Kazuya thought to himself that what they did was awful. One day, one of Hikari's classmates claimed to have lost their wallet. The wallet was then found in Hikari's bag. She kept saying over and over that she didn't do it, but the teacher seemed to have already accused her from the start. Her classmates really cornered her, and Hikari could even hear their laughter in the classroom. The girls hated her, and the boys started to tease her. Their smiles were different than before. It was as if Hikari could tell what they were thinking. Of course, Hikari felt very sad. Kazuya then asked if that was why Hikari never smiled anymore. Hikari said she no longer trusted smiles. Hearing her story made Kazuya feel upset too. Hikari then said that she did trust Kazuya's smile. She also told Kazuya that it was probably time to release the camera shutter. When they looked at the photo, it turned out to be stunning. Flowers and stars could be seen in the picture. Kazuya thought it looked like heaven. While looking at the photo, Hikari asked Kazuya what he wished for from the shooting star in the sky. Kazuya replied that he loved Hikari's smile. He added that he could count on one hand the number of times he had seen her smile. But Kazuya loved Hikari's smile, so he wished to see it as many times as there are stars or even more than that. That was Kazuya's wish. Hikari blushed when she heard that. She then asked if she could take a picture of Kazuya's smile. Kazuya immediately agreed. Hikari pointed her camera at Kazuya's face and snapped the photo. For her, it was the first time she had taken a picture of someone since she entered high school. After the picture was taken, Kazuya asked what Hikari wanted. Hikari responded that she also wanted to see Kazuya's smile more often. After saying that, Hikari tried to warm her hands by blowing on them. Seeing this, Kazuya held Hikari's hands and put them inside his jacket pocket. Hikari felt warm because of it. Kazuya moved his face closer to Hikari's, and the two shared a kiss under the starlight. The next day, Kazuya and Hikari were seen relaxing and taking photos of each other on a boat. Some other visitors at the location teased them. Kazuya then rowed the boat away from the crowd. While rowing, Kazuya invited Hikari to go to the beach next weekend. Hikari agreed to the plan and said she would wait for him at the bookstore near the station. Kazuya was curious why it had to be at the bookstore. Hikari explained that it was a place where she could read books if Kazuya was late. Kazuya smiled and said it took time for Hikari to trust him. Time passed, and now they were at the beach. Kazuya was photographing Hikari, who was wearing a swimsuit and playing on the beach. Hikari happily posed for pictures, smiling and striking various poses. Not only that, Hikari also took pictures of Kazuya. Kazuya captured many photos of Hikari there. In a room, there were plenty of pictures of Hikari and Kazuya, some of them alone and others together. And out of all those photos, it started with one where Hikari was eating a hamburger. Mai came into Kazuya's class to meet him. Naturally, the other boys in the room were in awe since Mai was a cute, popular girl admired by many of the boys at school. When Kazuya asked what was going on, Mai said she had a favor to ask and needed his help. After school, they ended up at a restaurant. In front of Mai was a bowl of pork cutlet. Mai explained that it wasn't just any pork cutlet. There was a special one with thick, crispy meat. Kazuya still didn't understand why she had brought him there. Mai then confessed that she really liked fried food but was currently on a diet. She hadn't eaten pork cutlet in so long that she almost forgot how it tasted, although she vaguely remembered it being delicious. So Mai asked Kazuya to eat it and describe the taste for her. Kazuya finally realized her favor was to have him taste the pork cutlet, but Kazuya explained he'd just eaten lunch and was already full. Mai seemed resigned and Kazuya was relieved that she understood. But then she mentioned that she still had Kazuya's adult magazine. Kazuya immediately recalled how he had accidentally dropped the magazine he borrowed from Nakagawa, which Mai then picked up. She admitted she had skimmed through it, finding it both embarrassing and a little pervy. Still, she acknowledged that some photos were quite beautiful and even captured a sense of beauty. Mai also pointed out that if the Rhythmic Gymnastics Club found out he owned such a magazine, they wouldn't allow him to take photos anymore. Reluctantly, Kazuya took the bowl of pork cutlet on the table and started eating. Mai watched him eagerly. Kazuya said the pork cutlet tasted delicious, but Mai wasn't satisfied. She wanted a more detailed description. Kazuya, feeling cornered, told her he couldn't give more detail. Mai just said porn magazine again, prompting Kazuya to take another bite and respond with more enthusiasm. It's delicious. Mai still wasn't happy, noting he was just repeating himself but louder. She ordered another bowl for him, expecting a better explanation this time. Kazuya's face paled from being overly full, but he had no choice. Taking another bite, he described the meat as juicy, balanced between crispiness and greasiness with a soft egg that perfectly complemented the sweet and sour sauce. The taste was so satisfying it defied words. Mai was thrilled, picturing herself eating the pork cutlet based on his vivid description. Mai's memory of the food was refreshed, and she began eating the cucumber and miso sandwich she had been holding. She told Kazuya that the pork cutlet was just the beginning. Hearing this, Kazuya tried to protest, saying he wasn't used to eating desserts. But once again, Mai whispered, "Porn magazine," compelling him to eat ice cream as she requested. Kazuya then described the taste, a blend of chocolate flavor with a smooth, creamy texture and the perfect level of sweetness. Although Mai could only imagine the taste, her excitement was clear. The next day, Kazuya took pictures of Mai practicing rhythmic gymnastics. Mai performed a variety of graceful movements. Then she stopped and walked over to Kazuya to check out the photos he'd taken. But instead of looking at the pictures, Mai became fixated on Kazuya's hand, and in her mind, she imagined it as a large piece of fried chicken. Without even thinking, she bit into it. Naturally, Kazuya was bewildered by Mai's behavior. She quickly realized what she had done, let go, and was clearly embarrassed. Mai apologized, explaining that she's been trying to lose weight to prepare for an upcoming competition this season. She wanted to keep her body in great shape. Kazuya felt sympathy for Mai and told her that it must be tough, but Mai assured him she was fine. Kazuya then asked if he could come cheer her on at the upcoming competition. Mai happily agreed. Kazuya admitted that cheering her on was all he could do to help, but for Mai, that alone meant the world to her. She had been training diligently, often staying up late into the night. Kazuya was incredibly impressed watching her dedication. Finally, the day of the elimination round for the competition arrived. The participants were warming up before their routines. Mai admitted to Kazuya that she was very nervous. Kazuya tried to calm and encourage her, and she was genuinely thankful, promising to do her best. Mai then walked to the center of the field, where everyone was watching her from the sidelines. She began her routine with flawless movements until the moment came to toss both batons into the air. She managed to catch one, but the other slipped and fell to the floor. She tried to grab it, but it slipped from her grasp again, causing her to stumble. There was a brief silence. Then Kazuya shouted out to Mai, urging her to get back up and not give up until the end. Hearing his words, Mai stood back up with renewed confidence, picked up the baton, and completed her routine with a big smile on her face. Kazuya, on the sidelines, continued capturing her every move. Finally, Mai completed her routine and the audience erupted in applause. She felt relieved and in her heart was deeply grateful to Kazuya. Later that night, Kanan was lying in bed claiming she had a fever. However, when Kazuya checked her, he didn't see any signs of one. Kanan insisted she was sick. So Kazuya told her to get some rest and she agreed. Then she asked if he could help her out. She explained that she had promised to go to the pool with Mai the next day, but since she might not be able to go, she wanted Kazuya to go in her place. Kanan thought Mai seemed down about her recent loss and wanted Kazuya to help cheer her up. Kanan knew how much Mai was looking forward to going, so she didn't want her to be disappointed. Kazuya hesitated for a moment, wondering if Mai would really enjoy hanging out with him. But Kanan reassured him that Mai would be thrilled. She even suggested that Mai might actually prefer spending time with him rather than with her. Kazuya observed Kanan's enthusiasm and joked that she didn't seem very sick after all. Kanan then lay back down in bed, coughing dramatically. The next day, Mai was already at the pool, and she looked incredibly happy to be there. She was full of energy. Kazuya, who was also there, didn't miss the chance to photograph her. Mai struck a variety of poses for Kazuya's shots. He praised her a lot, saying that the photos would turn out amazing. But then suddenly, Nakagawa and Azuma showed up. They looked irritated with Kazuya. They thought he was being too selfish. They started arguing and Mai, feeling confused, decided to walk away. Then the girl accidentally rolled a ball toward Kazuya and the others. She asked them to grab it for her. When Nakagawa and Kazuya saw the pretty girl, they immediately agreed to help and even competed to retrieve the ball first. Kazuya just watched them in silence. Later in the afternoon, Mai expressed her gratitude to Kazuya. She also confided in him about failing to participate in the fall competition, which shocked Kazuya. Mai admitted that if she continued to be gloomy about her failure, she wouldn't be able to find beauty. Hearing this from Mai, Kazuya couldn't help but smile. After that, the two of them started dating. Photography and rhythmic gymnastics, two completely different fields. They both searched for beauty in their own ways. Every time Kazuya saw Mai working hard, it inspired him to become a better photographer. And so he took photos every day. They spent a lot of fun times together, playing darts, shopping, and eating out. Even at school, they were often seen together. Then one day, Mai told him that she had left an adult magazine in Kazuya's desk drawer. He took it and found a quiet spot at school to open it. When he unwrapped it, a small piece of paper fell out. On it was a message from Mai. "Even though you're a perv, I still love you." Kazuya felt overjoyed reading her message. Suddenly, the cheetah appeared behind him, speculating that it was a love letter. Naturally, Kazuya was startled and quickly asked her not to tell Nakagawa and Azuma about it. One day, Mei was standing outside Kazuya's house. When Kazuya approached, she explained that she was waiting for Kanon. She had borrowed a DVD from Kanon and wanted to return it. Kazuya noticed it was cold outside, so he invited Mei inside. She agreed to come in. Kazuya led Mei to his room and placed her bag down, but he suddenly remembered that his mom wasn't home. He thought it might not be appropriate for them to be alone in his room, so he suggested moving to the main living area, but Mei said she didn't mind staying in his room. Mei then noticed Kazuya's large bed and commented that a bed that size could probably fit 2 people. Hearing her statement, Kazuya froze in shock. Realizing how embarrassing her words sounded, Mei quickly clarified that she didn't mean it that way. Kazuya laughed it off and invited her to sit down while he went to get her some tea. Mei decided to sit on the floor. She then grew curious, wondering where Kazuya kept his adult magazines. She heard that guys usually hide them under their beds, so she peeked under his bed and started searching. Kazuya was shocked and told her it was dirty and dusty down there. Mei grew even more suspicious. Just as Kazuya tried to stop her from going any further, he accidentally slipped and fell on top of her, landing on the bed, leaving them face to face, incredibly close. The room fell silent. Suddenly, they heard Kanon's voice as she entered the house. Naturally, Kazuya panicked. Kanon opened the door to the room with snacks in hand, looking puzzled as she saw Kazuya and Mei acting strangely, as if they were hiding something. Kanon sensed there was definitely something going on between them. A few days later, Mei came by Kazuya's class again, announcing that she had been selected as a backup team member. That afternoon, they walked home together. Mei talked about how she remembered the first time they met. Kazuya said he remembered too, commenting on everything that had happened since then. So many memories came flooding back whenever they were together. To Mei, they were all beautiful memories. Kazuya then told her he felt like she had given him motivation. When he saw how hard she trained, he realized there was something incredible within her. From that moment, he promised himself he would work even harder and take even better photos. Mei also told him he'd given her strength, especially when he encouraged her not to give up during the qualifiers. That really made her happy. Mei then mentioned that she's the shortest person in the rhythmic gymnastics club. Kazuya reassured her, saying that she's already even better than he thought. Mei smiled and told him she would give it her all, asking Kazuya to stay by her side and keep cheering her on. Kazuya happily agreed. He then walked closer to Mei and told her he loved her. He admired her determination, cuteness, and honesty. Mei turned around and asked Kazuya to hold her. She admitted that she had loved him for a long time too. They hugged and Mei felt overjoyed, resting against Kazuya's chest. Looking at her, Kazuya gently asked her to close her eyes. Mei then closed her eyes, stood on her tiptoes, and they shared a kiss as the beautiful sunset illuminated them. From then on, they began dating, sharing smiles with each other. To Mei, the days they spent chasing their dreams together were the most beautiful days. She wished to always be by Kazuya's side, forever and wherever life took them. On a peaceful and bright morning, Kazuya, still sound asleep, suddenly got a phone call from Nonoka. She told him to wake up quickly because Kazuya had promised to help her. Startled, Kazuya suddenly remembered his promise. That morning, Kazuya rushed out of his house, running while still carrying his camera. He had promised Nonoka to help her with her morning practice. Nonoka was already waiting at the field where they had agreed to meet. She greeted Kazuya, who looked out of breath. A flashback then occurred, showing Nonoka walking to school, carrying her bag. At the shoe locker, Nonoka met Kazuya and greeted him. Nonoka knew that Kazuya had been very dedicated to learning photography. Kazuya mentioned that he had been going around school taking lots of photos, but so far he hadn't found anyone willing to model for him. Every time he asked a girl to pose like an engraver magazine, they would immediately refuse. Nonoka, however, got excited and offered to be Kazuya's model. She was willing to pose for him as long as he didn't show the photos to anyone else. Kazuya was shocked by her offer. But then Nonoka had another condition. She whispered to Kazuya, asking him to become her training partner. She wanted to learn how to throw as well as the pitchers from the top softball league schools. The practice began and Kazuya was now doing squat jumps with Nonoka. After managing to complete 100 squat jumps, Kazuya collapsed in exhaustion. Nonoka praised him and now she wanted to do some pitching practice with him. Kazuya, already wearing his helmet and protective gear, was ready to catch Nonoka's throws. She instructed Kazuya to squat with his heels lifted, like a sumo wrestler. Kazuya complied, though he found it challenging. It was then that he understood the purpose of the squat jumps they had done earlier. Nonoka had planned all along for Kazuya to be her catcher, and she admitted it. She then started throwing pitches towards Kazuya. After the practice, Kazuya felt soreness in his back. He was actually grateful that Nonoka agreed to be his model. Now Kazuya headed to a bookstore to learn more about photography. He read and studied techniques he wasn't yet familiar with. While he was still reading a book, someone suddenly covered his eyes from behind. It was Nanoka. Kazuya said he felt he needed to improve his photography skills since Nanoka had agreed to be his model. Nanoka admired how seriously Kazuya took his hobby. Kazuya agreed, saying it was the same as how Nanoka worked hard to perfect her pitching. Nanoka felt flattered by his words. A few days later, as if fate was tying them together, Nanoka was in a hurry, running down the stairs. Afraid of being late, she decided to jump down to reach the bottom faster. She jumped but didn't anticipate that Kazuya was coming up the stairs at the same time. Seeing him, Nanoka panicked, but there was nothing she could do. She crashed into Kazuya, and by accident, their lips met. They both fell down, tumbling painfully on the stairs. Nanoka quickly asked Kazuya if he was okay. Kazuya said he was fine. Nanoka then apologized for her carelessness, complaining that her teeth hurt. Kazuya was surprised because he felt the same. They both realized in shock that they had accidentally kissed. However, Nanoka didn't seem upset. She actually felt relieved that her first kiss was with Kazuya. She admitted that she would have been sad if it had been with someone she hated. One day, Haruka was seen sewing a bag. It turned out to be Nanoka's sports bag, which had torn a while ago. Nanoka was thrilled when she saw Haruka's sewing work, as it made her sports bag look even prettier. She thanked Haruka, but then glanced at Kazuya with a jealous look. Nanoka commented that Haruka was quite skilled at sewing and very feminine. That's what she thought was on Kazuya's mind at the moment. Kazuya just stared at Nanoka, confused. Nanoka stood up, holding her bag, and said that she couldn't sew. Kazuya protested, saying that he never said anything like that. Nanoka squinted her eyes and remarked, "But your eyes said it." Kazuya was left speechless. Nanoka thanked Haruka again and walked away. Before getting too far, Nanoka turned back and told Kazuya not to compare her to Haruka. Kazuya was still puzzled about what she meant. As she walked down the stairs, Nanoka stopped and thought back to the time when she accidentally kissed Kazuya. Now, she was on the rooftop alone. Not long after, Kazuya came over to her. It turned out Nanoka was waiting for him there. She handed Kazuya a piece of paper. Of course, Kazuya was confused about what it was. Written on the envelope was one word: challenge. With excitement, Nanoka told him that she was challenging him to a duel. She challenged Kazuya to a love duel and wanted to compete fairly. Naturally, Kazuya was still confused, not knowing what Nanoka meant. Haruka then turned around and explained as if she knew that Kazuya's dream girl was someone like Haruka. Kazuya asked why Nanoka thought that. Nanoka explained that she had been watching Kazuya for a long time, even since middle school, so she knew. Nervously, Kazuya replied that guys usually look for something attractive in a girl. Haruka asked, "Does that mean I have no chance at all?" Kazuya was baffled by the question. Nanoka, knowing that Kazuya wasn't the most perceptive guy, decided to say it directly. She loved him. Kazuya was silent. Then Nanoka asked again, "Have you never noticed?" She confessed that she had loved Kazuya since middle school. She felt incredibly happy when she was with him. Nanoka also always hoped that Kazuya would be someone she could talk to about anything. However, Nanoka noticed that Kazuya only liked Haruka. Kazuya could only listen. With a sad expression, Nanoka added that she had already shared her first kiss with the person she loved. If she gave up, it would be heartbreaking. So Nanoka wanted to try to become a girl that Kazuya could love. She wanted Kazuya to tell her what her shortcomings were. Kazuya still couldn't say anything. Nanoka continued, telling Kazuya that if she ever did anything that his dream girl wouldn't do, she wanted him to tell her quickly. And that's what she meant by the duel between them. Kazuya said that this was the first time a girl had ever confessed to him, so he didn't know what to say. But Nanoka insisted that Kazuya accept her love challenge. Kazuya's face turned red as he took the paper Nanoka was holding and said that he accepted her challenge. Naturally, this made Nanoka extremely happy. Then summer arrived. Kazuya accompanied Nanoka for her morning practice and faced her love challenge. It wasn't just to repay her for modeling for Kazuya, but because Nanoka had become a big part of his life. Nanoka threw the ball a few times and Kazuya caught it, until they both felt tired and took a break. Kazuya observed Nanoka's skin, noting that even though she was an athlete, her skin still looked pale. Nanoka confirmed this, then, lifting her shorts, said, "Look, it's even paler down here." Of course, that surprised Kazuya, making him spit out the water he was drinking. Nanoka seemed confused by his reaction. She explained that it shouldn't be such a shock. After all, Kazuya would see her wearing bloomers anyway. Hearing that, Kazuya firmly said that Nanoka wasn't wearing bloomers right now, so wasn't she embarrassed by lifting her shorts like that? Kazuya thought Nanoka should learn more about modesty. Nanoka was shocked, realizing she had lost a point. The next day at lunchtime, Nanoka got her food as usual and prepared to eat. But Kazuya, who was in front of her, asked if she was really going to eat all that food. Nanoka confirmed that she was. Kazuya sighed and said she should consider how it looked. Nonoka responded by saying the food looked delicious. Kazuya pointed out that wasn't the issue and with a serious tone, said that any guy would be puzzled to see a girl eating so much. Another strike for Nonoka. She lost another point. Determined, Nonoka demanded a rematch. She wanted to win back a point with this sexy pose. Kazuya thought for a moment, then suggested they go to the beach. Fast forward, they were at the beach. Nonoka, in her casual clothes, struck various poses for Kazuya to photograph. After a while, Nonoka said she would change her outfit and asked Kazuya to wait. Before long, Nonoka returned wearing a swimsuit, which surprised Kazuya. Nonoka continued posing and Kazuya kept taking pictures. He was amazed because the swimsuit looked perfect on her. Kazuya couldn't stop taking photos of Nonoka on the beach. He was grateful to her because thanks to Nonoka, he got all these amazing shots. Nonoka was thrilled to hear that, but she felt she needed to do something bolder, like posing nude or with a camera. Kazuya, still focused on the photos on his camera, didn't really catch what she said. Suddenly, two thugs overheard Nonoka and approached them, mocking them. The two guys said they wanted to join the photo shoot. Nonoka looked scared. Kazuya, bravely, stood up to face them. The thugs looked down on Kazuya. Inside, Kazuya just wanted to protect Nonoka, who had worked so hard to help him. As the thugs got closer, Kazuya stepped on a nearby bench, causing it to flip up and hit one of the thugs in the chin. In that moment, Kazuya told Nonoka to run. Naturally, the thugs got angry and Kazuya also ran away. The thugs tried to chase him, but luckily, a muscular man blocked their path. The thugs were scared off and couldn't do anything. Kazuya and Nonoka were running away from the thugs, hand in hand, both smiling as they dashed towards a lush, tree-covered area. Once they arrived, out of breath, Nonoka apologized, saying she shouldn't have carelessly mentioned something like a hand bra. Kazuya was confused. What kind of Graver magazine had inspired Nonoka? He reassured her that he wasn't going to take those kinds of photos. Kazuya also praised Nonoka, saying she looked amazing and natural in all the photos taken that day. To him, that was more than enough. Nonoka blushed, flattered that Kazuya was thinking about her feelings. However, she still didn't feel satisfied unless she did what she had planned. Turning around, Nonoka struck the pose she'd been wanting to do all along, showing it Kazuya. He was utterly shocked, as if struck by lightning on a clear day. Time passed and the second semester began. Nonoka continued training with Kazuya. In his opinion, she was only one step away from mastering the throwing technique she had been aiming for. Kazuya thought about this while cleaning the photography club room. He grumbled a bit, annoyed that he had to clean up alone. As he swept, the tip of the mop accidentally knocked over Uchiha's metal box, sending it crashing to the floor. Panicking, Kazuya hurried to clean up the mess, intending to apologize to Uchiha later. But as he tidied up, Kazuya noticed a costume, something like cosplay attire, had spilled out of the box. This triggered a memory. He had once photographed a cosplayer wearing the same outfit at an event. That cosplayer also had a mole under their left eye, just like Uchiha. Realizing this, Kazuya became suspicious that Uchiha and the cosplayer might actually be the same person. Later that afternoon, Nonoka was sitting alone by the riverside, absent-mindedly skipping stones across the water. Kazuya approached her, greeting her and asking if she planned to spend the day there. Nonoka seemed embarrassed by his question, sheepishly replying that she was thinking about taking a break for the day. Seeing her response, Kazuya asked if something was bothering her since she seemed a bit restless. Nonoka admitted that she did feel a little uneasy. Kazuya then asked when they would practice again, as he was eager to see her master the throwing technique. Nonoka hesitated before saying that she didn't feel like mastering it anymore. She had wanted to perfect the throw for both herself and her team, but once she did, their training sessions would come to an end. And when that happened, she wouldn't be able to spend time with Kazuya anymore. Hearing Nonoka's heartfelt confession, Kazuya told her how much fun he had that summer. He enjoyed their training sessions and the challenges she posed to him. Nonoka admitted that she had fun too. Kazuya mentioned that he had taken many pictures, preserving all their memories from that summer. Nonoka nodded in agreement. Kazuya reassured her that even if she mastered the throw, their memories wouldn't disappear. It wasn't like they'd be starting over from scratch. He expressed his desire to do something else with her after this. Nonoka was touched by his words. Kazuya then asked if he could take a picture of her in the middle of the throw. Since he had always been her catcher, he didn't have any photos of her actually throwing. Nonoka agreed, though she pointed out that she was in her school uniform and didn't have a ball with her. They both got ready anyway. Kazuya crouched down, camera in hand, while Nonoka mimed the motion of throwing a ball with the technique she had been practicing. Looking through his camera, Kazuya realized he had captured the perfect moment. In the next practice session, Nonoka finally mastered the throw she had been working so hard on. The ball initially seemed like it would drop to the ground, but then it curved upwards at the last second. Both Kazuya and Nanoka were thrilled with her success after all the effort they had put in. And that marked the end of their training together. Summer had turned into fall. Kazuya asked Nanoka to meet him on the rooftop. Once they were together there, Kazuya asked if Nanoka was ready for the results. Nanoka nodded, though she admitted she was really nervous. With a serious expression, Kazuya said that he was admitting defeat. Nanoka's charm had won him over. He told her that she was always cheerful and full of energy, and she was always on his mind. Kazuya regretted not realizing that such a beautiful girl had been right by his side all along. Then shouting, Kazuya confessed that he was deeply in love with Nanoka. Nanoka was both flattered and overjoyed, as if she couldn't believe what was happening. With tears in her eyes, she started to explain that ever since they first met in middle school and started talking, she had never stopped thinking about him. Nanoka had always been watching him. Kazuya then admitted that he was the one who had been losing points throughout their love challenge. Nanoka's honest and straightforward feelings had gradually won over his heart. The two of them embraced each other tightly. Accompanied by the setting sun, they shared a kiss. Afterward, Nanoka felt like her life was a dream. She was happy that her feelings had reached him, and even happier that Kazuya had fallen in love with her. Softball and photography. Their interests might have been different, but both of them pursued their passions wholeheartedly. Nanoka was incredibly grateful to Kazuya for giving her so much strength. She was thankful, and she loved Kazuya deeply. The sky was overcast, and Tomoe was crouching alone, gazing at the water in front of her. She kept changing her facial expressions as she looked at her reflection in the water. Suddenly, she was startled when someone asked what she was doing. It turned out that Kazuya had been standing nearby. Tomoe asked if he had seen her, and Kazuya replied that he had seen her making various faces. Naturally, Tomoe felt embarrassed. She admitted that she had been thinking it might be better if she could have more expressive facial expressions. Kazuya then asked if she didn't like her current expression, to which Tomoe agreed, saying that her face seemed too plain and looked gloomy. Kazuya was surprised to hear that, but just then, heavy rain began to fall. Kazuya offered to share his umbrella with Tomoe, and the two of them walked together. Eventually, they took shelter in front of a shop, hoping the rain would let up soon. A lot of people passed by them there, and Tomoe felt as though everyone was staring at them. She admitted that she didn't like standing out. Kazuya said he felt the same way. However, Tomoe noted that Kazuya seemed to have changed. To her, he was friendly and could chat so casually with Haruka. Kazuya smiled, admitting that it was only recently that he'd become close with Haruka. Kazuya then mentioned that he and Tomoe probably had a lot in common. Tomoe blushed when she heard that. Then the next day at school, all the students looked cheerful, chatting with each other. When school ended, one of Kazuya's friends invited him to walk home together, but Kazuya declined, explaining that he planned to take more photos today. As Kazuya was leaving the classroom, Tomoe suddenly greeted him by the door. She thanked him for what he had done yesterday and invited him to go somewhere with her. Kazuya hesitated at first, but eventually agreed. Later, on a quiet staircase, Tomoe handed him a small package, which turned out to be a box of cupcakes. Kazuya happily accepted it and immediately started eating them right there. He found Tomoe's cupcakes delicious, which made Tomoe very happy to hear. Seeing her expression made Kazuya want to take her picture. However, Tomoe declined, saying she wasn't very photogenic and suggested Kazuya take photos of someone like Haruka instead. Then Tomoe stood up and began to walk away. As she walked off, Kazuya called out, saying that she didn't look plain at all. In fact, she looked beautiful. Hearing this, Tomoe felt flattered, her cheeks turning red. After that day, Kazuya started taking photos of Tomoe whenever he saw her, whether by the pool, in the garden, the gymnasium, and other places around school. Then one afternoon, Kazuya opened his shoe locker and found a handwritten note from Tomoe. Startled, he thought it might be a love letter. He hurried up the stairs to the rooftop as the note had instructed. Tomoe was already waiting for him there. They met, and Kazuya asked her what she wanted to say. Nervously, Tomoe said that she had never felt like this before, and she thought she needed to tell Kazuya. Kazuya's heart raced. He was sure this must be a confession of love. But then, Tomoe told him she would be transferring to a new school after the cultural festival. Naturally, Kazuya was shocked. Tomoe shared that she has been moving from school to school since she was young, due to her father's job. Because of this, she decided it was best to avoid standing out. In her view, it was better to keep to herself and hope no one noticed when she left. Curious, Kazuya asked why she chose to tell him all this. Tomoe lowered her gaze, unable to give an answer, and told Kazuya to leave her alone. She felt she'd only be a bother if he stayed with her. Kazuya stood and asked if she'd mind if he stayed with her until that day came. He suggested that they could still make some memories together. Tomo looked up, surprised, and asked if he was really sure about that. Kazuya confidently said yes. Hearing this, Tomo shyly asked if Kazuya would be her friend. Kazuya was a bit surprised, but he reassured her, saying, weren't they already friends? This made Tomo genuinely happy. Kazuya then told her he'd keep taking photos of her just like always to capture memories. That way she could always look back and remember the school whenever she wanted. Tomo was deeply touched and thanked Kazuya sincerely. As he focused his camera on her, Kazuya asked her to smile. Tomo smiled sweetly and he captured that moment with his camera. On another day, Kazuya invited Tomo to go around visiting the school clubs to take some photos. They joined a photo club where members were photographing flowers and Tomo practiced using a camera. At the softball club, she tried catching the ball, although she missed. She also attempted to throw and bat just like the other players. At the tennis club, she ran into Haruka, who happily lent her a tennis outfit and offered to teach her the basics of tennis. In the cooking club, Riina guided Tomoe in cooking activities. Throughout each experience, Kazuya captured photos of Tomoe in each moment. By late afternoon, Kazuya and Tomoe were walking home together. Kazuya told her he'd make an album with all the photos he'd taken. Tomoe was thrilled about meeting so many people. Kazuya then suggested they also take pictures outside of school, wanting to create memories just for the two of them. Tomoe happily agreed. They spent the following days together, capturing moments in different places and creating countless memories. Tomoe was overjoyed, feeling like it was all still a dream. She believed that perhaps when she woke up tomorrow, everything would return to how it was before. While relaxing by the beach, Tomoe looked over at Kazuya and asked if he remembered the time she cried at Haruka's desk. Kazuya replied that he did. Tomoe then explained that at that moment she had said she was envious of Haruka, but in reality she hadn't been. Kazuya was taken aback. Tomoe continued, admitting that she wasn't sure how to repay Haruka's kindness, which made her feel genuinely sad. Kazuya listened intently. Tomoe then expressed her gratitude to Kazuya, saying she had now decided to tell everyone that she would be transferring. The next day, her teacher invited Tomoe to share something in front of the class. After gathering her courage, Tomoe announced that she would be transferring to another school. Her classmates were understandably shocked. Tomoe went on to say that she wanted to make memories with everyone before she left. After her announcement, many of the girls gathered around her during the break, wanting to chat with her. To Kazuya, it was a huge and meaningful step for Tomoe. In the days that followed, she was always surrounded by friends, leaving Kazuya with fewer chances to talk to her. Time passed quickly, and soon the day of the cultural festival arrived. Tomoe was enjoying herself with the other girls, but the day they would have to say goodbye to her was also drawing closer. Tomoe continued to have fun and chat with everyone. Then one day, they all went to a pool together. The girls had a great time there, floating on floats, diving, eating ice cream, going down water slides, and posing for pictures. However, Tomoe seemed to be alone, and when Kazuya asked her about it, she admitted that she didn't want to swim and was happier just watching everyone else have fun. Kazuya tried to cheer her up and encouraged her to smile as he took her picture. Tomoe did, and Kazuya was pleased to capture the moment. Suddenly, Kanan protested, saying that the others wanted to be in the photos too, not just Tomoe. Hearing this, Kazuya called everyone over to gather for a group photo. Tomoe changed into her swimsuit too, which surprised Kazuya and made him blush. The other girls were also surprised to see Tomoe in her swimsuit. Tomoe explained that she usually looked plain, so she wanted to try something different. She wondered if her swimsuit was still too simple, which left everyone a bit stunned. After that, they all gathered together, posing for Kazuya, who captured this special moment with his camera. Kazuya put all the photos he had taken into an album, working on it in the photography club room. Soon after, Hiramaki showed up and greeted him. Hiramaki knew that the album Kazuya was making was meant to be a farewell gift for Tomoe. He said that only photos could preserve moments and feelings forever. Whether these memories become part of the past or the future is up to us, he added. Hiramaki then encouraged Kazuya to make these feelings part of his future. Kazuya nodded and hurriedly left with the album in hand, running out of the school gates and hailing a taxi. The taxi sped off toward the train station where Tomoe was set to leave her family. Out of breath, Kazuya called out to Tomoe and handed her the album, asking her to open it once she was on the train. Tomoe took it and Kazuya explained that the album was a special graduation gift for her. He purposely didn't include any photos of himself in the album as he didn't want to be just another memory for Tomoe, nor did he want Tomoe to become only a memory for him. He wanted to see her again, not just as a memory. Tomoe was touched and tears filled her eyes. They shared a warm embrace. Soon after, Tomoe began to step onto the train as it prepared to depart. To her surprise, Haruka and the others were also there to see her off. Maya told Tomoe to come back to the town someday, while Rina handed her a packed lunch. They all expressed how much they would miss her. Feeling overwhelmed with happiness and emotion, Tomoe promised that she would see them again someday. As the train started moving, Kazuya ran alongside, promising to come visit her someday. Tomoe waved goodbye, leaving them behind. Meanwhile, Azuma felt sad that he was too late and couldn't give Tomoe his photos. Nakagawa commented that Azuma's shots were amazing, and Hiromichi reassured them, saying he was sure the photos would reach her one day through Kazuya. During her journey, Tomoe opened the album Kazuya had given her, feeling incredibly happy as she looked through it. Time passed, and one evening Kazuya and Tomoe were at the beach together. It was the same beach they had visited before. Tomoe had asked to return to that place to relive the memories. She thanked Kazuya for choosing her, as they were now both attending the same college. To Tomoe, it all felt like a dream. Kazuya smiled, and Tomoe told him that she would always be by his side. In the calm glow of the sunset, they embraced and shared a kiss. One morning, a few of the girls at Kazuya's school were at the swimming pool. Nakagawa and Azuma ran into Kazuya and filled him in. All the girls looked like they were having a blast at the pool, laughing and playing around together. According to Nakagawa and Azuma, this was the perfect chance to see the wife of the academy, Rina Yunoki, in her swimsuit. Kazuya was about to leave, uninterested in their invitation. But then Nakagawa said they were serious this time, as they planned to take a photo and capture Rina's chest. In his mind, Kazuya thought these two hadn't given up yet. Nakagawa and Azuma proudly explained that they had a special move ready that used Azuma's strength. Kazuya became curious about what they meant. They then showed off their special move that they had apparently been practicing. From a distance, Nakagawa ran toward Azuma, jumped into his waiting hands, and was quickly launched into the air. Nakagawa landed perfectly on Azuma's shoulders. Striking a pose, they proudly announced this was their special move, Camera Fusion, Super High Angle. Kazuya could only stare blankly at their antics. They then explained that by teaming up like this, they'd be able to get a picture of Rina's chest from over the fence. However, just as they were about to head to the pool, it turned out Azuma couldn't move. His legs were shaking and sweat covered his face. She was simply too heavy. Kazuya commented that it seemed their plan was bound to fail again. At this moment, Kazuya was thinking about the concept for a poster he'd been assigned to make for the Cooking Research Society. But instead, his mind kept drifting to thoughts of Rina's beauty and perfection. She was the only member of the Cooking Research Society. Kazuya knew he should be promoting the club itself, not just Rina. Then a flashback occurred, showing a moment when Kazuya was walking down the school corridor. Suddenly, he caught a pleasant aroma drifting through the air from the cooking room. He opened the door and found Rina cooking alone in there. When Rina noticed him, she smiled and invited him in. Rina explained that she was trying out a new recipe to present at the cultural festival. She offered Kazuya a burger she had made. Kazuya hesitated since he wasn't anyone special and was just passing by. But Rina urged him, saying that since she was the club's only member, she was thrilled when he stopped by. Kazuya tried the burger Rina made and he found it delicious. Rina was overjoyed to hear this. She mentioned that she really wanted to recruit new members for her club because if she didn't find at least 4 more members before the festival ended, the club would be shut down. Kazuya was shocked to hear that since they only had 1 month left before the festival began. Rina explained that she had tried making posters to recruit members, but it didn't seem to be working. Kazuya looked at the poster and thought that something like that might not really stand out. He pondered a bit and then came up with an idea. What if they tried adding a photo to the poster? He suggested that adding a photo of Rina's dishes to the poster could be a great advertisement. Rina agreed with the idea and was excited to try it out. However, Kazuya mentioned that now might not be the best time as he needed to learn how to properly photograph food first. Rina understood, saying she would think of a new dish for the cultural festival. So once Rina finished creating that new dish, Kazuya would photograph it. They both agreed, each with their own task ahead. But as time went on, Kazuya felt like his skills weren't really improving much. Then, while he was walking alone, Nakagawa and Azuma suddenly came running up to him, both of them in a panic. They ran past Kazuya, calling out for his help and basically throwing the situation into his hands. Kazuya thought to himself, weren't they ever going to give up? Suddenly, a group of girls in sports clothes started scolding him, accusing him of being from the photography club and sneaking into the girls' room. Of course, Kazuya was shocked and denied it right away. But the girls didn't believe him. They were still mad and accusing him since they'd often seen him around there with his camera. Unable to hold back her anger, one of the girls then grabbed him and threw him to the ground. Rina happened to be there too, but she couldn't do anything to help him. Kazuya was sprawled on the ground, and when he looked up, he saw the girls standing around him. With an awkward grin, he stared up at them. Naturally, the girls found his look creepy and started hitting him again. Later on, Kazuya decided to explain everything to Rina. He was clearly very annoyed, thinking about how all of this was Nakagawa and Izuma's fault. As he opened the door to the cooking room, Kazuya was startled to see Rina holding a spoon, chanting something like a spell to try and make it bend. Surprised, Kazuya immediately took out his camera, thinking this was a moment he couldn't miss. When Rina realized he was taking her picture, she looked over at him. Kazuya then asked if she was really trying to bend the spoon. Rina blushed, feeling embarrassed about being photographed. She explained that she was only doing it because she was bored as there weren't any other members around. She felt really embarrassed. Kazuya wanted to explain what had happened earlier, but then Rina said he didn't need to worry about it. She had already cleared things up with the others, telling them it was all just a misunderstanding. Rina said she trusted Kazuya wasn't the type to do something like that. Kazuya was very grateful to Rina. He asked if there was anything he could do to repay her kindness. Rina then said she could actually use some help finding a 4-leaf clover as a garnish for her dish. They made their way to the schoolyard and began searching. Kazuya mumbled to himself that it was harder than he had imagined. Rina also mentioned that maybe a lot of the 4-leaf clovers had already been taken, since they're said to grant wishes. Then they spotted one. As they both reached for it at the same time, they accidentally bumped heads. Naturally, they both felt the pain. Rina rubbed her head while chanting, "Pain, pain, go away." But it didn't seem to work. Kazuya commented that maybe it doesn't work if you say it to yourself. Rina hadn't realized that, so she leaned forward and let Kazuya rub her head while chanting the phrase. Rina smiled happily, holding onto the 4-leaf clover they had found. As they walked back to the cooking room together, they passed by a tree, and as it turned out, Uchida was hiding there. Kazuya couldn't see her, but Rina noticed Uchida right away and greeted her. Rina seemed to know that Uchida was usually alone and invited her to come cook with them. Kazuya was a bit taken aback because he couldn't see who Rina was talking to. Uchida figured maybe her stealth skill didn't work on Rina. Kazuya eventually realized it was Uchida and explained that she was a member of the photography club. Rina invited Uchida to cook with them again, but Uchida declined, saying she'd rather be left alone. Rina was persistent though and told Uchida that being alone could get pretty boring. Uchida couldn't refuse and now found herself in the cooking room, still surprised that her stealth skill didn't work on Rina. The two of them finally started cooking together, while Kazuya watched and occasionally snapped photos of them. In the end, their hard work paid off and they presented a beautiful, delicious-looking cake. Rina invited Kazuya to take photos of it, so he eagerly captured it from various angles. However, Kazuya still felt unsatisfied with the shots he'd just taken. Later that night, Kazuya continued practicing his photography in his room. Kanan came by and noticed what he was up to. Kazuya explained that he was trying to figure out how to make food look appetizing in photos. Meanwhile, Rina was busy cooking up several burger variations but didn't seem fully content with the results either. One day, during a quiet moment at school, Kazuya was photographing something when Rina approached him. She asked what he was up to, and it turned out Kazuya was taking pictures of a sunflower. He asked Rina about her cooking projects, and she admitted that they weren't going as well as she hoped. So she decided to go outside and find a change of scenery. Rina mentioned that they both need to work hard to improve. That's when Kazuya got an idea. The next day, he waited in front of a shop in the city, reading a book while waiting for Rina to arrive. Suddenly, someone covered his eyes from behind, asking him to guess who they were. He thought it might be Rina, but the hands felt too small. It turned out to be a young girl he didn't know, inviting him to go to an amusement park with her. Kazuya was confused until, from a distance, he saw Rina running toward him. The young girl turned out to be Rina's little sister. Rina explained that she had told her sister about their plans and her sister had insisted on tagging along. Kazuya understood. He had a little sister who was always following him around too. He figured it would be like having another little sister for the day, which sounded fun to him. Rina smiled at that thought. The three of them finally arrived at the amusement park and enjoyed the various rides. They even went into a haunted house, which ended up scaring both Rina and her little sister. After enjoying several attractions, they took a break in a nearby park. Rina had prepared a ton of food for them to share. Kazuya was impressed by how cute and tasty the food looked. Rina even offered to feed Kazuya, but at the same moment, her little sister also tried to feed him. Kazuya was at a loss, and then he jokingly commented that Rina would make an amazing wife someday. Rina blushed and her little sister teased them, saying they looked like newlyweds, which made both Rina and Kazuya turn red. Once they finished eating, Rina's little sister unexpectedly fell asleep in Kazuya's lap. Kazuya complimented Rina on how delicious the food was, and Rina was thrilled to hear it. Kazuya added that he not only enjoyed the taste, but also the cute presentation. In that moment, Rina got an idea for her next cooking project. She felt grateful, as the outing with Kazuya had inspired her. Kazuya was a little embarrassed and told her that he hadn't really done anything special. Then Rina shared that the student council president once spoke to her about the club when she first founded it. The president told her that Rina would need to work hard to attract new members, and that it would be wonderful if students' recipes could be passed down through the generations. Rina hadn't minded being the only club member. She was okay with it possibly disbanding. But after spending time with Kazuya and experimenting with recipes that people might enjoy, she began to feel differently. Now Rina wanted the Cooking Research Society to keep going. She wanted people to experience the joy of cooking. Kazuya agreed, encouraging her with confidence that they could make it happen. The next day, Rina was already cooking in the kitchen as Kazuya photographed her from every angle. Suddenly, a school-wide announcement came through the speakers, reminding everyone that it was the last day to submit posters for the cultural festival. The afternoon passed quickly, and before they knew it, it was almost evening. Just then, Rina completed a dish she called the sunflower burger. Kazuya looked at it in awe, thinking it looked not only delicious but also adorable. Rina mentioned that it was Kazuya's photography that inspired her to create the sunflower burger. The announcement sounded again, reminding everyone that it was almost 5 p.m., the deadline for poster submissions. Kazuya quickly jumped in, instructing Rina to hold the reflector board while he took the final photo of the burger. Once done, they rushed to the student council room to submit the poster just in time. They returned to the cooking room, relieved they had managed to complete everything at the last moment. Even so, Rina noted that their main goal, recruiting new members, was still not achieved. Smiling, Rina encouraged Kazuya to keep up their efforts. The day of the cultural festival finally arrived. Kazuya told Rina that if everything went well, he wanted her to meet him in the school courtyard afterward because he had something to tell her. Rina agreed. Then Kazuya went to the cooking room, which had been transformed into a magic-themed cafe. As he entered, he found Rina already there, dressed in a bunny-maid costume. Kazuya was, of course, taken aback, surprised to see her dressed that way. It turned out that Kanon and Nanoka had come up with the idea to help Rina attract new members. Rina was very grateful to both of them. Then came another surprise. A famous cosplayer named Alice entered the room, instantly capturing the attention of the boys. Alice held Rina's hand, saying she wanted to help too. Rina knew that Alice was actually Uchida, but kept it to herself when Uchida subtly signaled her not to reveal her identity. The atmosphere in the cooking room became lively, drawing in many visitors. By evening, Kazuya was sitting alone in the school garden when Rina ran up to him, excitedly announcing that something incredible had happened. Just moments earlier, 5 first-year girls approached her, wanting to join the club. Kazuya was both surprised and thrilled to hear this. Rina added that the girls had asked if learning how to make the sunflower burger was part of the club. Kazuya felt so grateful, realizing the club wouldn't be shut down. Rina was also delighted at the thought of passing down the sunflower burger recipe, thanking Kazuya for his help in making it happen. Kazuya denied taking credit, saying it was all due to Rina's hard work. For a moment, a comfortable silence settled between them. Then, almost simultaneously, they both seemed to want to say something. Rina spoke first, telling Kazuya that she loved him. Kazuya was stunned and never expecting her to confess her feelings before he did. He then told her he loved her too and admitted he had asked her to meet him here to share his own feelings. They embraced each other, the moment filled with warmth and happiness. Rina suggested they call each other by affectionate names just like newlyweds would. Rina playfully called Kazuya darling, and he responded by using her first name. Gazing into each other's eyes, they shared a loving kiss, bringing their romantic moment to a beautiful close. In a bathroom, Kazuya is soaking alone in a warm bathtub. As he looks up, he's confused. What is he doing here? Is Kanon really planning to bathe with him? Kazuya starts to wonder if, any moment now, Kanon will walk into the bathroom without any clothes on. A conflict starts brewing in Kazuya's mind because he knows he shouldn't be thinking like that about his younger sister. Then Kanon begins to enter the bathroom. Kazuya glances over at her and notices she's wearing her swimsuit, which surprises him a little. Kanon is also a bit startled when she sees Kazuya's reaction. She immediately accuses her older brother, assuming he thought she was going to come in without any clothes. She calls Kazuya a pervert. Kazuya is not okay with that accusation. He stands up and Kanon quickly averts her gaze and covers her eyes. But when she looks again, she realizes that he's also wearing swim trunks. Kanon then remarks that maybe, because they're siblings, they ended up thinking the same way. On another day, everyone is shocked when Kanon wins a lottery prize, a trip for 2 to Europe. Overjoyed, she runs over and hugs Kazuya. Kanon decides to gift the prize to their parents since they've never had a honeymoon before. So now it's just Kazuya and Kanon alone at home. Kazuya feels thrilled and starts letting his imagination run wild. When they both go inside the house and into the kitchen, they notice that their parents have left ingredients ready for them to cook. Not long after, a meal prepared by Kanon is ready on the dining table. Kazuya begins to eat the food she's made. As he eats the omelette, Kanon asks him if it tastes like the ones their mom makes. Kazuya hesitates a bit, then says that it's not quite like mom's, but it's still delicious. Hearing this, Kanon feels really happy. After the meal, the two sit together in the main room, each reading a magazine. Kazuya seems stunned, glancing at Kanon, who is wearing her shorts. However, he quickly looks away. Later that night, Kazuya tries to sleep but finds himself thinking about how Kanon has grown up so much. The next day in the photography club room, Kazuya is grilled by Nakagawa and Azuma, who seem really excited to learn that Kazuya and Kanon are home alone together. Of course, Kazuya insists that nothing's going to happen. Then Hiromichi chimes in, suggesting that if Kazuya made Kanon his photography subject, he might see her from a different perspective. After that, Kazuya starts taking photos of Kanon playing tennis on the court. He captures various moments, and that's when Kazuya starts to realize that his little sister has grown up. Kazuya even admits that Kanon looks cute now. Shortly after, Katsumi shows up and greets Kazuya. She then asks to see the photos he's taken. After looking at Kazuya's shots, Katsumi comments that his photos are good. Kazuya then asks if he can look at the photos on Katsumi's camera as well. When Kazuya sees them, he's really impressed and hopes that one day he'll be able to take photos like that too. Katsumi explains that she simply wants to encourage those who are working hard through her camera. Just then, Narita suddenly appears and declares that Kazuya has 100 years to go before he can match Katsumi's skills. Narita knows that Katsumi has only recently started photography, yet she's already able to capture such beautiful images with her camera. Narita then tries to persuade Katsumi to join him in a beach volleyball tournament. Katsumi quickly declines, saying she's turned down his invitation countless times, yet Narita keeps pushing. Disappointed, Narita chases after Katsumi as she walks away from the court. Another time, Kazuya continues to take pictures of Kanon as she poses in her school uniform. It turns out Kanon wants to audition for an idol contest coming up soon. Looking at the photos, Kanon is pleased and feels they're perfect for the audition. Then Kazuya suggests she try a softer expression. Kanon is a bit confused by what he means, so Kazuya proposes that maybe she could think about someone she loves. Kanon considers this for a moment, then decides to give it a shot. Kazuya, camera ready, waits for Kanon's expression. She then shifts her look and softly says, "I love you." Kazuya is slightly startled by Kanon's expression but doesn't miss the chance to capture it. Suddenly, Kazuya feels a twinge in his heart, realizing Kanon might actually have someone she loves. Later that night, out of the blue, Nakagawa and Azuma show up at Kazuya's house. Naturally, Kazuya is surprised and confused as to why they're visiting. Nakagawa then says he's here for a magazine Kazuya borrowed from him. But Azuma reveals that it's just an excuse. The real reason they're here is because they want to see Kanon wearing nothing but an apron. Kazuya immediately gets annoyed, insisting there's no way Kanon would be dressed like that. But shortly after, Kanon unexpectedly appears wearing an apron. From the front, it looks like she's only wearing the apron, but actually Kanon is also wearing a shirt and shorts. Kanon brings over the magazine that Nakagawa had mentioned and returns it, thanking them. Nakagawa and Azuma can't believe their luck seeing Kanon in the apron. Later, Kazuya gets a call from his parents. His dad, having a little too much fun on his first trip to Europe, has fallen ill, so they'll be staying there longer. Kazuya tells Kanon the news, and his face turns red when Kanon remarks that they'll be alone together a bit longer. Her words keep replaying in Kazuya's mind, making it hard for him to get a good night's sleep. That night, Kazuya takes out an album from the shelf. His dad had entrusted him with the album to give to Kanon when the time was right. The album contains pictures of Kanon from when she was a little girl. Kazuya thinks she was probably too young to remember, but he's the one who gave her the little bell that now hangs on her phone. The next day, Kanon is seen drinking water after playing tennis. This reminds Kazuya of when they were kids and he used to help her reach the faucet she couldn't reach on her own. Suddenly, a few guys approach Kanon and start flirting with her. Kazuya sees what's happening but decides to walk away. Kanon notices, catching sight of her brother running off. Later that night, Kazuya is sitting alone by the roadside. Kanon comes over and greets him, mentioning that she actually wanted to walk home with him earlier, but he just ran off. Suddenly, it begins to rain heavily. Kazuya quickly tells Kanon they should hurry home so she doesn't catch a cold. When they get home, they end up soaking in the bathtub together. Naturally, both Kazuya and Kanon feel like the bathtub is a bit too cramped for the two of them. Kazuya comments on how quickly time has flown and how they've both grown up. Kanon says she hopes they can stay close forever. Kazuya feels the same way. Back in his room, Kazuya starts to think that maybe it's time to tell Kanon the truth, that they're not actually biological siblings. But he knows that if he does, it might change their relationship forever. Meanwhile, in her own room, Kanon is also reminiscing about her moments with Kazuya. like when she felt jealous watching Katsui talk to him or when she saw a photo of another girl on his camera. Soon after, Kanan drifts off to sleep. The next morning, Kanan cooks fried eggs for their breakfast. She then asks if Kazuya has any plans for Sunday, as she's thinking of going to the beach that day. Kazuya thinks for a moment and then agrees with her plan. On Sunday, they finally arrive at the beach. Kanan looks thrilled to be there, enjoying herself as she plays in the sand, swims, and relaxes with a cold drink. Kazuya captures all these moments on his camera. Coincidentally, there's also a beach volleyball tournament happening there. Katsumi and Narita are competing, and surprisingly, Harumiki and Uchida are also there, cheering Katsumi and Narita on. The match is intense, with both teams going head-to-head in a fierce competition. After the game, Narita comes over to talk with Kazuya and Kanan. She expresses her thanks for their support. Kanan praises Katsumi and Narita's skills during the volleyball game, though it's unfortunate that they lost in the second round. Kazuya then asks where Katsumi is, only to learn she's talking with her boyfriend. Narita admits that she's a bit jealous, but she knows her feelings will likely go unreturned. Still, just being by Katsumi's side is enough for her. Kazuya feels for her. Narita then says goodbye and leaves. Kanan quietly remarks that she thinks she can relate to how Narita feels. As the evening sets in, Kanan is busy building a sandcastle. Kazuya arrives with some drinks, and suddenly, a memory from the past resurfaces. He recalls little Kanan walking along the beach crying and dragging her stuffed bunny, calling out for her dad. At that time, Kazuya had been there and had asked her if she was lost. Kazuya comforted her, assuring her that he'd help her find her dad. They walked along together, calling out for him. Curious, Kazuya had asked her why she kept calling for her dad and wondered where her mom was. Kanan replied that her mom had become a star in the sky, so she wouldn't be sick anymore. Kazuya immediately understood that Kanan's mom had passed away. Just then, Kanan's dad had appeared nearby, and she ran over to him, hugging him tightly. Kazuya felt relieved to see that Kanan had found her dad. She explained that she wasn't lost, it was her bunny who had gotten lost. Shortly after, Kazuya's own mom arrived and asked if he was the one who found Kanan. He nodded and explained what had happened. Kazuya's mom then told him that he had just met his new little sister. Kazuya was, of course, confused. Then Kanan's dad mentioned that he had just gained a cool big brother for Kanan. Kanan looked over at Kazuya, and their parents explained that they would be a new family and would live together from that day on. Kazuya and Kanan continued building the sandcastle on the beach while their parents watched from afar. Kazuya then gave Kanan a little bell, saying that if her bunny ever got lost again, it would be easier to find it. Kazuya promised to be a good big brother to her. Together, they dug tunnels for their sandcastle. Back to the present, Kazuya is still lost in that memory. Kanan, who's building a sandcastle on the beach, calls him over to help her dig tunnels for it. Kazuya agrees, and as they work, their hands accidentally touch. They both freeze for a second, surprised. Then Kanan asks if Kazuya remembers the Star Castle. Kazuya is surprised, realizing Kanan hasn't just remembered it now, but has always kept that memory with her. Kanan says she's never forgotten. Kazuya is taken aback by this. Kanan then asks if Kazuya remembers giving her the little bell, and Kazuya admits that he remembers everything from that day. Kanan is also surprised to realize that Kazuya remembers it all too. She understands now that Kazuya has always cared for her deeply, like a true older brother. To Kanan, Kazuya has always been so kind to her. She adds that she has also tried her best to be a good little sister to him. Kanan wants to say something more, but she hesitates, afraid that it might change their relationship forever. It turns out Kazuya is thinking the same thing. He regrets not telling Kanan sooner. Kanan then says she's just happy they're able to talk like this. Time passes, and Kazuya decides to give Kanan the photo album his dad entrusted to him. Kanan opens the album and looks at pictures of herself as a young child. She also finds a photo of her biological mother and thinks they look alike. To her, the album feels so powerful. Photos have the ability to transcend time. Kazuya agrees. Kanan then mentions that she also has something she wants to give Kazuya, her first love letter. She recently wrote it, feeling shy about confessing her love in a letter, but she still wants him to have it. Kazuya accepts it, but just as he's about to open it, Kanan stops him, saying she wants him to read it only after she graduates high school. Kazuya agrees and promises to keep the letter safe until then. Kazuya then tells her she's cute. Kanan is taken aback, surprised to hear this from him. Kazuya explains that he couldn't say it before because they were siblings, but now he feels he can. He says again that she's really, really cute, cuter than anyone. Kanan blushes, feeling happy and flustered. She responds saying that she loves Kazuya. Just then, a shooting star appears in the night sky. Kanan lights up with excitement and runs over, jumping up onto a railing. She says that the star is her mom's star and she feels like her mom is watching over her. Kanan suddenly loses her balance and almost falls, but Kazuya quickly catches her. They hold each other tightly, and in that moment, they share a kiss under the dark, star-filled sky. Finally, graduation day arrives. On that beautiful spring day, Kanan and Kazuya meet again. Kazuya takes out Kanan's letter, which he's kept safe inside his jacket. Seeing this, Kanan is overjoyed. She runs toward him and Kazuya captures the moment with his camera. Then, at last, they embrace each other tightly.